Montana winters are long, cold, and unforgiving. Snow blankets the mountains, valleys, and forests, creating landscapes of beauty and isolation. But hidden among the frozen peaks are villages that have long been abandoned, frozen in time, and haunted by memories that refuse to fade. Imagine walking through streets lined with empty cabins, snow crunching underfoot, the air so still it feels alive. Windows frost over, yet shadows move behind them. Lanterns flicker in the night, though no flame burns inside. Footsteps echo on the icy paths, but when you turn, the streets are empty. Some say the snow itself carries whispers, remnants of voices from long ago. Others swear they have glimpsed figures peering from broken doors, or children playing where none have lived for decades. In Montana, the cold does not only bite the skin, it seeps into the soul. Tonight, we explore 25 haunted snow villages in Montana, each frozen in time, each holding secrets that chill even the bravest hearts. Montana is vast, with mountains that scrape the sky and forests so dense they swallow sunlight. Its remote villages tell stories of harsh winters, pioneering settlers, and tragedies hidden beneath layers of snow. Some villages were abandoned after sudden blizzards, others after mysterious disappearances. Ghosts linger where life was abruptly taken. Travelers report hearing doors creak, windows rattle, and footsteps in the snow. Lanterns ignite and extinguish on their own. Shadows shift, reflecting forms that were never alive. Cold gusts pierce layers of clothing. A sense of being watched never leaves. These villages are frozen in time, yet alive with whispers, memories, and echoes of lives once lived. As we journey through these haunting landscapes, ask yourself this: if you walked into a snow-covered village where no one has lived for decades, would you brave the night alone, knowing something might be waiting just out of sight? Frost Hollow rests in a narrow valley, surrounded by towering pines dusted with snow. The air is sharp and still, carrying the crisp scent of frost and evergreen. Shadows stretch long across the frozen ground, and the snow reflects a pale, diffuse light that seems almost otherworldly. Silence dominates, yet beneath it is a subtle hum, a resonance that cannot be explained by wind or wildlife. Every step across the icy paths carries a sense of history, as though the valley itself remembers those who once called it home. The village was abandoned decades ago after a sudden winter storm claimed half of its population. Houses stand in quiet decay, their wooden frames frostbitten and bleached. Smoke does not rise from chimneys, yet lanterns sway gently in the cold air, as though invisible hands keep them alight. Paths between cabins are clear of recent footprints, yet impressions appear in the snow that vanish upon closer inspection. Visitors feel an invisible presence guiding them to the hollow, a sensation that is both compelling and unsettling. Shadowy figures move between the cabins, glimpsed from a corner of the eye. They vanish when approached, leaving no trace behind. Some appear as silhouettes of adults tending to invisible chores, while others resemble children at play. Their movements are fluid yet insubstantial, as if the hollow itself shapes them from mist and memory. Whispers drift through the trees, faint voices calling names, or sharing fragments of conversation that fade as soon as attention turns. The laughter of children echoes across the valley, chilling and bright, a sound that seems impossibly out of place in the still winter air. The forest surrounding the village contributes to the atmosphere. Pines groan under the weight of snow, branches creaking in patterns that mimic human motion. The wind flows along the valley, carrying sounds from one cabin to another, transforming distant noises into ghostly echoes. Footsteps that appear behind visitors often fade before they can turn to see, and the snow itself seems to shift subtly, concealing what is near and revealing what is far. Frost Hollow is alive in ways that defy ordinary understanding, a space where environment and memory intertwine. Visitors often experience a distortion of perception. Distances feel altered, paths curve unexpectedly, and familiar cabins appear in places where they should not exist. Distances feel altered, paths curve unexpectedly, and familiar cabins appear in places where they should not exist. Time seems suspended in the hollow. the days stretching longer than reality allows, and shadows lengthening in impossible directions. The days stretching longer than reality allows, and shadows lengthening in impossible directions. And shadows lengthening in impossible directions. Lantern light, pale and wavering, glows with an unsteady rhythm, casting elongated shapes that interact with the drifting figures. Casting elongated shapes that interact with the drifting figures. Even the most grounded travelers report feelings of disorientation and heightened awareness, as though the hollow is testing attention and intent. As though the hollow is testing attention and intent. The village itself tells a story of sudden tragedy. Roofs are collapsed in sections, walls lean precariously, and doors hang loosely on rusted hinges. Personal belongings are frozen in place, remnants of lives abruptly interrupted. Dolls' cups and clothing are scattered across yards and interiors, their positions unchanged for decades. Some visitors report a sensation of being watched. While examining these artifacts, a subtle pressure on the skin, or a feeling that the figures glimpsed are aware of their presence and intentions. Frost Hollow thrives on subtlety rather than spectacle. The haunting is in the quiet, the sway of a lantern, the distant echo of a voice, the shift of a shadow across snow. Every footstep seems to awaken a response from the environment. Even light behaves unpredictably, reflecting off frost in ways that produce shapes and patterns that vanish when observed directly. The hollow does not rush its message. It lingers, wrapping visitors in its history and atmosphere. Encounters here are often fleeting yet profound. Shadowy figures may appear at the edge of a frozen stream or along an abandoned fence, their form indistinct but purposeful. Whispers might follow a visitor along a path, dissolving when attention focuses on them. Children's laughter may seem close one moment and distant the next, and impressions in the snow seem to repeat or move when unobserved. Each experience reinforces the idea that Frost Hollow exists in multiple layers, where past and present coexist, and the boundary between living and spectral is permeable. Weather adds to the drama of the hollow. Snowstorms descend without warning, blanketing the village, and amplifying its isolation. Clear nights offer sharp starlight that glints across frost, illuminating glimpses of movement that may or may not be real. Even in calm weather, cold gusts move unpredictably through streets and alleyways, carrying subtle sounds and scents that trigger memory and imagination. Frost Hollow is a place where environment, history, and perception converge, making each visit unique and unforgettable. Local accounts tell of visitors who remain hours longer than intended, wandering paths and cabins with no recollection of time. Some report fleeting interactions with shadowy children or adults, while others describe sensing presence without seeing forms at all. The common thread is an enduring impression of being observed and subtly guided, a feeling that the hollow itself is aware and engaged with anyone who enters. Ultimately, Frost Hollow is more than an abandoned village. It is a living memory, a space where the past lingers with uncanny presence, and a natural environment amplifies spectral echoes. The combination of snow, shadows, whispers, and swaying lanterns transforms a valley into a cinematic, immersive landscape. Each visitor becomes part of the story, and each encounter deepens a sense of mystery and unease. Crossing Frost Hollow is not merely a walk through an abandoned village. It is an experience of heightened perception, where light, shadow, sound, and memory converge. Every step is an interaction with history and spectral presence. The hollow leaves a lasting impression, a sense of having glimpsed a space outside ordinary time and perception. Snow-laden pines, frozen cabins, drifting figures, and whispered voices combine to create a haunting journey that remains vivid long after departure. Silent Pines is hidden deep within a thick, unyielding forest. The trees are tall and close together, their dark trunks creating tunnels of shadow along narrow paths. The wind moves through the branches with a low, whispering sound, carrying a chill that seeps into bones. Travelers feel an immediate shift upon entering the area, a weight in the air that makes each step feel heavier. as if the forest itself watches every movement. In the heart of silent pines, footprints often appear in fresh snow, leading across roads, through yards, and into fields, only to vanish without explanation. Travelers who follow them describe an eerie sensation, a pull toward the unknown, and a quiet unease that grows with every step. Lights flicker in empty windows, appearing and disappearing without reason. Warm glows suggest life within abandoned homes, yet rooms remain empty and silent. Some report glimpses of movement, shadows passing across the panes, though no one is ever seen. The phenomenon is subtle, yet persistent, leaving visitors with the sense that the village is not as lifeless as it appears. The cold and silent pines feels different from ordinary winter air. It is heavier, almost tangible, pressing against the skin and settling in the chest. Even in sunlight, the chill lingers, wrapping itself around travelers as if the very village itself is aware of their presence. The sensation deepens unease and sharpens awareness, making every sound, every movement feel amplified. Doors open and close without cause. A door might creak slowly ajar, revealing darkness beyond, only to slam shut moments later. The sound echoes across the empty streets and through the trees, startling those who hear it. Some swear that repeated attempts to locate the source lead only to silence, leaving behind an impression that the village itself manipulates its environment. Shadows move where they should not. Trees, buildings, and fence posts appear to stretch, bend, or shift in ways that defy logic. Travelers report catching glimpses of figures at the edge of vision, shapes that vanish when confronted. The phenomenon is subtle, more suggestion than a confrontation, yet it creates a constant tension, a feeling that Samania or Somthinga is observing. Footsteps echo through the streets, soft but deliberate, following travelers across snow and gravel. Often, the sounds come from empty paths, from behind locked doors, or from above rooftops. The echoes are never random. They seem to respond to movement, to presence, creating an unsettling impression of a living village that reacts to its guests. The village layout itself feels distorted. Streets appear longer than they should, intersections seem to shift, and landmarks appear to move subtly with each glance. Travelers describe a disorienting sensation, as though silent pines exist slightly out of sync with the surrounding world. Maps and directions lose meaning, and instinct becomes the only guide. The atmosphere is eerie and unsettling, with an undercurrent of supernatural dread. Sound behaves strangely within the village. The crunch of footsteps, the whistle of wind, and the rustle of trees echo differently depending on location and timing. Whispered noises carry from house to house, sometimes imitating voices. Radios, though unused, occasionally emit static or faint murmurs that vanish when investigated. Even wildlife behaves unusually. Birds fly in tight formations, avoiding certain areas, while deer and smaller creatures are often absent from spots where they would normally roam. The lack of ordinary sounds heightens attention, making every crack a branch, every shifting shadow, feel significant and loaded with meaning. Travelers consistently report a feeling of being tested or observed. Each movement, each glance, seems noted by unseen watchers. Paths appear inviting, yet lead to dead ends. Open spaces seem exposed, yet carry the sensation of hidden eyes. The village has a rhythm, subtle but persistent, drawing attention to the unseen and the unknown. Snowfall transforms silent pines into a ghostly landscape. Blankets of white mute sound, soften shapes, and enhance the contrast of shadows. Footprints become temporary evidence of passage. Lights appear sharper against the dim winter sky, and the cold presses even more insistently against the body. Every element amplifies the otherworldly nature of the village, making even brief visits unforgettable. Silent Pines is not merely a village. It is an environment that challenges perception. Light, shadow, sound, and temperature interact to create a space where the ordinary rules of observation are suspended. Travelers leave with heightened senses, a deep awareness of presence, and the lingering impression that they were never entirely alone. Every journey through Silent Pines is unique, yet all share a common thread. The village leaves an imprint of subtle tension, mysterious phenomena, and haunting beauty. Footprints, flickering lights, shifting shadows, and whispered words combine to create an atmosphere of quiet unease. A place where the living walk through a landscape inhabited by the unseen. Visitors often describe leaving with memories that linger long after departure. The feel of cold, the echo of footsteps, and the suggestion of watching eyes remain in the mind. Silent Pines endures as a testament to the power of environment, perception, and subtle mystery. A village where snow, shadows, and silence converge to create an unforgettable, haunting experience. Wintra's end rests on the side of a frozen mountain. A village once alive with families and work, now abandoned and silent. Snow blankets the rooftops and streets, creating a uniform white that stretches endlessly. The wind whips through empty chimneys and broken windows, carrying a sound that feels almost like breathing. Each gust seems to animate the village, giving movement to structures that have stood deserted for decades. Visitors speak of figures crossing icy streets. They are fleeting shapes, sometimes visible for only a moment before vanishing mid-step. Their movements are deliberate, yet unnatural, as if walking between two worlds. The cold air carries faint impressions of Lithia, echoes of footsteps, murmurs of conversation, the distant clink of tools or bells. Every sound seems preserved in the snow, waiting for someone to notice, for someone to acknowledge the presence of the past. Doors sway gently on their hinges, and bells attached to them jingle faintly, though no one disturbs them. The sound is subtle but insistent, cutting through the wind like a memory. It gives a sense that the village itself is alive in some way, holding on to fragments of life that occurred long ago. Even the smallest details, a shutter opening or the sway of a sign, seem deliberate, part of a rhythm that exists beyond human comprehension, of life that occurred long ago. The houses of Wintra's are frozen in time. Windows are frosted over, reflecting light in strange ways that make the streets appear populated when they are empty. Smoke does not rise from chimneys, yet the air sometimes carries a faint scent of wood fires, bread baking, and smoke from past winters. The village is a collage of preserved life and lingering spirits, an environment in which the living and the dead coexist in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Visitors describe the snow as heavy with memory. Each step leaves a mark, but footprints are often filled in by drifting flakes before they fade completely. Some report hearing voices riding the wind, faint and distant, crying, laughing, or calling to someone unseen. The sounds are never clear enough to understand fully, yet they carry emotion, a weight of history and loss that lingers in the bones and mind. The village is isolated, surrounded by cliffs and frozen slopes. Avalanches that forced the original residents to leave now serve as natural barriers, keeping the village protected from casual visitors. The isolation intensifies the feeling of being suspended in time. Travelers often find themselves moving more slowly, listening more intently, attuned to subtle changes in wind, light, and sound. Every moment becomes an exercise in observation, an awareness of the thin line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Wintra's End is especially eerie at twilight. Shadows stretch across icy streets, and the fading light paints the snow in deep blues and purples. The air feels heavier, more tangible, as if each breath carries a memory of those who lived here long ago. The wind shifts unpredictably, creating patterns of sound that suggest footsteps, whispers, or the murmur of unseen conversations. Some visitors report seeing flickers of activity within houses. Curtains may twitch, doors may open briefly, or the shadow of a figure may appear behind frosted glass. The effect is fleeting, impossible to capture fully, yet it leaves an undeniable impression. The village does not simply house the past. It interacts with it, preserving motion, sound, and feeling like a frozen echo. Travelers often feel a presence following them, a quiet awareness that they are not alone. It is subtle, a brush against perception rather than a direct encounter. The sensation builds gradually, intensified by silence, snow, and the sense that the village remembers. Each turn along narrow streets reveals details that seem orchestrated, as though the environment itself guides attention, drawing focus to certain spots where the past is most vivid. Time moves differently in winter's end. Minutes may feel stretched, as if the village slows perception. The experience is immersive, combining the stark beauty of snow, the isolation of mountain cliffs, and the subtle interactions of unseen forces. Every sound, shadow, and movement becomes significant, a thread connecting the present moment with the history embedded in the village. Winter's End is a place where memory lives in the snow and wind, where structures breathe with the weight of the past, and where visitors sense lives that have never fully departed. It is a village of echoes, frozen yet alive, where each step across icy streets is an encounter with the stories preserved by frost and time. Would you dare to walk through Winter's End, to feel the presence of unseen residents, to hear whispers carried on the frozen wind, and to witness a village where the snow holds the voices of the past? Icevale rests beside a frozen river, its wooden structures half buried in snow and ice. By day, the village appears quiet, almost picturesque, with frost-covered roofs and frozen windows reflecting pale light. Yet as twilight falls, the atmosphere shifts, and a sense of unease permeates the crisp air. Shadows stretch unnaturally across snow-covered paths, and the wind carries whispers that seem almost intentional, moving with a rhythm that unsettles the mind. Travelers who venture near Icevale often report an inexplicable compulsion to leave quickly. The village seems to resist prolonged attention, as if the streets and buildings themselves are alive, aware of those who wander among them. Every step through the snow crunches loudly, amplified by the stillness, yet there is often the echo of footsteps behind, matching the traveler-esque pace, and then vanishing when attention is turned. The sensation is subtle but persistent, a quiet insistence that lingers long after departure. Windows of the abandoned houses often appear to hold glowing eyes, reflections that seem alive and aware. At times, shapes can be glimpsed inside, moving against the light or shifting in ways that defy natural perception. Observers describe the feeling of being watched, an unshakable sense that attention is focused on them from within the village. The presence is never aggressive, yet creates a tension that is difficult to ignore, pulling travelers into heightened awareness of their surroundings. Shadows behave in unexpected ways. Even familiar objects take on strange proportions. The snow itself seems to respond, shifting underfoot in patterns. The sensation that Icevale exists slightly outside the normal rules of reality, adding to the feeling that the village exerts control. Sounds are amplified and distorted in the quiet of the frozen landscape. The crackle of ice underfoot echoes across empty streets, and distant gusts of wind carry whispers that seem synchronized with movement. The river beneath the ice groans and shifts with temperature, producing low, resonant tones that reinforce the sense of presence. Footsteps, rustling snow, and subtle creaks from buildings combine to form an auditory environment that is immersive and disorienting. Travelers often report fleeting glimpses of movement in peripheral vision. Figures appear and vanish, barely visible against the white and gray tones of the village. Sometimes the forms seem humanoid, other times they take on more abstract shapes, impossible to categorize. The ephemeral nature of these sightings strengthens the impression that Icevale is not fully grounded in ordinary reality, and that lingering increases the likelihood of encountering phenomena beyond comprehension. The frozen river itself contributes to the village's enigmatic aura. Its surface is glassy and reflective, occasionally cracking with sudden shifts that echo across the landscape. Reflections distort figures, stretching and compressing them, creating moments of disorientation. Travelers often find that what they see in the ice is not a simple mirror of reality, but a subtle interplay between reflection and imagination, heightening both curiosity and caution. Night intensifies the sensations. Darkness deepens shadows, and the faint glow from windows of the moon casts long, shifting shapes across snow and ice. Footsteps behind the traveler become more insistent, yet vanish when confronted. Glowing eyes appear with greater frequency, and the quiet hum of the river blends with soft, almost whisper voices carried on the wind. Every detail is amplified, producing an environment that is both beautiful and unsettling, where perception is continuously tested. Attempts to record or document the village rarely capture its full essence. Cameras flatten depth, audio equipment struggles to reproduce whispers, and the interplay of light, snow, and shadow eludes replication. Icevale retains its mysteries for those present, offering experiences that are personal, immersive, and ephemeral. Each visit becomes a unique interaction with the environment, a journey where memory and perception intertwine. Despite the sense of unease, Icevale possesses a haunting beauty. Frost-laden trees, frozen roofs, and the glimmering ice of the river create a cinematic scene that captivates the eye. The village draws travelers into a careful balance of fascination and caution, encouraging observation while demanding respect for its elusive nature. Icevale is more than a frozen village. It is a convergence of perception, memory, and phenomena that challenge ordinary experience. Glowing eyes, shifting shadows, footsteps in the snow, and subtle whispers combine to create an immersive environment that engages the senses and the mind. Those who enter leave with lasting impressions, a heightened awareness that the village exists on the edge of the known, and that every journey through its streets and across its frozen river becomes part of Icevale's enduring enigmatic story. Frostbite Crossing lies in a remote stretch of forested mountains, where icy winds whip relentlessly through narrow valleys. The road is flanked by snow-laden pines, their branches heavy with frost, creaking and groaning under the weight. Silence dominates, but it is a deceptive quiet, pierced by faint cracks, distant howls, and the occasional whisper of snow shifting along the ground. Every step along the crossing feels charged, as though the landscape itself remembers what has occurred and watches those who enter. Travelers recount strange phenomena that defy explanation. Cabins appear along the path, warm and inviting, only to vanish when approached. Doors swing on empty hinges. Shadows glide across walls where no one stands. Faint cries echo from areas long abandoned. Snow drifts seem to hold memories, replaying scenes of life and tragedy for those who linger after dark. Every footprint in the frost becomes an invitation to witness the crossing's spectral history, whether one is prepared or not. The atmosphere is heavy and immersive. Frost sparkles under pale moonlight, reflecting in ways that suggest movement where there is none. Footsteps falling out of sync, sometimes mimicking their own, other times moving independently. The crossing seems alive. Phantom cabins are the most frequently reported phenomenon. From a distance, they appear solid, complete with light spilling from windows, smoke rising from chimneys and doors ajar. As one approaches, walls fade into mist, and the structures disappear entirely, leaving only frost and pine behind. Occasionally, glimpses of figures inside are reported as shadowed adults performing invisible tasks, children playing silent lyre. But these images vanish instantly upon direct attention. The experience is disorienting, blending fear and fascination with an undeniable sense of wonder. Whispers drift through the frozen air. They are faint, almost imperceptible at first, then growing into murmurs that call names, recount fragments of conversation, or repeat words that make no sense. The origin is elusive, sometimes sounding nearby, other times distant and layered. Travelers often describe the sensation of voices moving around them, yet no one is visible. The wind seems to carry both sound and meaning, guiding perception while maintaining its mystery. Shadows play a central role in the crossing to haunting. Shadows stretch along trees, cabins, and snowdrifts, forming humanoid shapes that vanish when attention focuses on them. Peripheral vision is constantly engaged, and even in broad daylight, fleeting movements are observed that seem to defy ordinary understanding. Some describe encountering shadowed figures at the edge of paths, standing silently or moving alongside them, only to dissolve into the air or melt into surrounding snow. The cross-Singda-esque environment amplifies every sensation. Frost crunches beneath boots or tires in unexpected rhythms. Branches sway without wind, their movements synchronized with distant sounds. Snow drift shifts subtly, reshaping footprints and obscuring familiar paths. Ice forms on river edges and stream surfaces in patterns that resemble frozen silhouettes. And moonlight transforms a landscape into a mosaic of light and shadow that constantly shifts. Every crossing becomes a dance of perception and anticipation. Weather heightens the spectral nature of frostbite crossing. Winter storms descend suddenly, reducing visibility and muting sound, while clear nights reveal stars that glint off frost like distant eyes watching from above. The cold air carries both silence and resonance, producing tones that mimic whispers, footsteps, or distant laughter. Even calm days are not free from unease, as shadows, mist, and frost conspire to create a space that is simultaneously serene and unsettling. Local accounts reinforce the Crossing's eerie reputation. Drivers, hikers, and wanderers describe experiences of disorientation, fear, and fascination. Some recount glimpses of figures who vanish when approached, phantom cabins that disappear, and voices that follow them for miles. Others report subtle sensations of pressure on shoulders, sudden chills, or the impression of being watchada that persists long after leaving the area. The Crossing's history of tragedy and abandonment seems to leave an enduring imprint on environment and perception alike. Time itself appears altered along frostbite crossing. Paths curve unexpectedly, distances fluctuate, and familiar landmarks shift subtly from one visit to the next. Travelers often report the sensation of loops, retracing steps despite moving forward. Snow reflects light in ways that confuse orientation, and shadows lengthen or contract with no relation to the sun or moon. These distortions reinforce the impression that the crossing exists in a liminal space between reality and memory, between the living and the spectral. The haunting here is subtle but persistent. Small details, a swaying lantern, a fleeting shadow, accumulate to create an immersive cinematic experience. Frostbite crossing demands attention, and it rewards those who notice its nuances. With a narrative that is at once eerie, beautiful, and unforgettable, each crossing becomes a personal story, a memory, that blends of the hollow spectral past and the frozen landscape surrounding it. Ultimately, Frostbite Crossing is more than a road or a stretch of forest. It is a living archive of history, perception, and the unseen. Every shadow, whisper, and fleeting figure contributes to the sense that this place remembers, observes, and responds. Visitors leave with impressions that linger, a mixture of fascination and unease, carrying the Crossing's memory long after footprints have vanished into the snow. The experience of Frostbite Crossing is one of heightened awareness, where environment, history, and the unseen converge. Each step engages senses, memory, and imagination, producing a journey that is simultaneously physical and psychological. Snow-laden pines, vanishing cabins, drifting shadows, and whispered voices combine to create a haunting narrative that is cinematic, immersive, and enduring. Crossing Frostbite Crossing is to encounter a space outside ordinary perception. The snow, shadows, whispers, and phantom forms create a setting where past and present coexist. Each visit is a story, each step a connection to the hollow spectral memory. The experience leaves travelers with a sense that the landscape itself is alive, that the snow holds memory, and that Frostbite Crossing is far more than it appears to the eye. Shiver Hollow perches atop a lonely hill, its abandoned buildings leaning as if bowing to the relentless cold. The streets are blanketed in snow, muffling ordinary sounds and amplifying the eerie stillness. Travelers often speak of a strange sensation the moment they arrive, a quiet pressure in the air that seems to weigh upon the chest and sharpen every sense. Footsteps echo where no one walks. They resonate across rooftops and empty streets, sharp against the soft snow, vanishing when followed. Some claim to glimpse fleeting figures in broken windows, shadows moving against the dim glow of the winter sky. These shapes appear only for a moment, leaving a lingering unease and the sense of being watched. Lanterns swing in empty rooms, their light dancing across peeling walls and cracked floors. Shadows stretch unnaturally, stretching across hallways and over snow-laden streets. The movement is subtle yet deliberate, as if the building itself breathes and reacts to any intrusion. Every flicker of light creates a new mystery, and every corner holds a possibility of another presence. The cold in Shiver Hollow feels different from ordinary winter chill. It penetrates deep into bones, carrying an almost tangible weight. It seeps through clothing and skin, and even when sheltered inside an abandoned building, it lingers, making the simplest movements feel deliberate and cautious. Travelers often find themselves pausing, listening to sounds that should not exist, or looking over shoulders at shadows that move in impossible ways. Doors open and close without cause. A wooden frame might creak slowly, as if under the pressure of an unseen hand, before slamming shut with sudden force. The echoes roll across the empty streets and up to the rooftops, creating the impression of life within a village long abandoned. Each sound feels intentional, a message from the hollow itself, commanding attention and respect. Windows reveal reflections that do not belong. Sometimes a passerby catches a glimpse of a figure behind them, only for it to vanish when they turn. Other times, faces appear in glass, watching silently, fading when approached. The phenomenon is fleeting yet persistent, leaving visitors questioning the line between imagination and reality. Shiver Hollow's abandoned buildings hold memories that seem to echo in every hallway. The architecture itself seems to be alive, shifting subtly in perception, making familiar pathways feel disorienting and unfamiliar. Every hallway, every room, carries a story that refuses to remain silent. The wind carries whispers through the village, low and indistinct, blending with the rustle of snow and the creak of timber. Words are often unintelligible, yet the intonation creates a sense of intent, as if the hollow communicates through the air itself. Listeners describe a mix of curiosity and dread, drawn to explore while simultaneously fearing what they may encounter. Shadows move in unnatural ways. Trees, fences, and broken rooftops cast shapes that seem to slide across the snow, lingering at the edge of vision. Travelers feel eyes upon them, a persistent awareness that extends beyond sight. Even in the daylight, the hollow retains a spectral presence, with long shadows and shifting forms creating an atmosphere of constant tension. Snowfall transforms Shiver Hollow into a ghostly landscape. The white blanket mutes sound, heightens contrast, and sharpens every shadow. Footprints appear and vanish inexplicably, sometimes crossing paths that cannot be logically reached. Lights glow softly in windows that are unquestionably empty, creating the illusion of a living village amidst the abandoned structures. Travelers consistently report sensations of being tested or observed. Each movement feels scrutinized, each glance noted by unseen eyes. Paths invite exploration, yet lead to dead ends. Open spaces offer exposure, yet carry the persistent feeling of unseen watchers. The hollow has a rhythm, subtle yet deliberate, drawing attention to the unknown and the unseen. Even the simplest actions become laden with significance. Every crack in a board, every groan of timber, every flicker of light seems to interact with a presence that lingers in Shiver Hollow. Travelers leave Shiver Hollow with impressions that linger long after departure. The sound of phantom footsteps, the flicker of swinging lanterns, the weight of cold, and the sensation of watching eyes remain in memory. The hollow endures as a place where environment, perception, and subtle mystery converge, a location that captures imagination and instills a quiet unease. Every visit to Shiver Hollow is unique, yet all share a common thread. The village leaves an indelible mark. Its abandoned buildings, snow-laden streets, shifting shadows, and whispered voices combine to create an experience both beautiful and unsettling. Visitors are drawn into its atmosphere, leaving with memories of a place that exists just beyond the boundary of the ordinary, where the cold, the dark, and the unseen converge to create a haunting, unforgettable presence. Shiver Hollow stands as a testament to the power of environment and subtle suggestion. It is a location that engages the senses, challenges perception, and instills both wonder and fear. The echoes of the past, the play of light and shadow, and the persistent feeling of being watched ensure that the hollow remains alive in memory. Long after the snow has melted and the travelers have left, Crystal Pines lies cradled within a dense forest of frost-covered pines. The trees tower above, their branches heavy with ice, creating a canopy that filters light into pale, fractured rays. The village itself is quiet, abandoned decades ago when a harsh winter sealed off all access. Snowdrifts and ice now fill the streets, and the cabins, once filled with warmth and life, stand silent and empty. Travelers entering Crystal Pines report shadowy forms moving at the edges of vision. They are fleeting glimpses, often disappearing when observed directly. Shapes pass through alleys and behind windows, moving with deliberate, almost human grace. The sense of being watched is constant, subtle yet insistent. It is as if the village remembers those who once lived here and watches those who dare to enter its frozen streets. The wind carries whispers. Some are in languages long forgotten, fragments of speech preserved in the ice and trees. Others are familiar, echoing in the tone of a neighbor who vanished decades ago. The voices rise and fall with the wind, never fully coherent but carrying emotion of grief, longing, or warning. These sounds create a haunting symphony that fills the streets, giving life to the empty cabins and snow-covered roofs. Every structure in Crystal Pines is a relic of the past. Icicles hang from eaves like frozen chandeliers, and frost patterns on windows resemble intricate lace. Doors sway gently, sometimes opening or closing as if pushed by invisible hands. Footsteps on snow-covered paths echo strangely, amplified by the stillness, and then fade into silence. The village itself feels alive, as if the frost and wind have become custodians of memory. Visitors describe an unsettling duality. The beauty of the ice-covered forest and sunlit snow contrasts sharply with a sense of lingering presence. A cabin may appear inviting, its interior seeming warm and intact, yet inside there is only cold shadow and silence. Shapes flicker in corners, and the air carries a faint scent of smoke or bread, remnants of a life that once thrived here. Paths wind to the village in irregular patterns, sometimes blocked by fallen trees or deep snow. Travelers often feel disoriented, as if the layout of the streets shifts subtly while they are not looking. Familiar landmarks vanish or appear in different positions. The sensation is disconcerting, leaving visitors unsure whether they are moving forward or circling endlessly in the snow-laden streets. Even the trees seem to participate in the Village-esque quiet drama. Branches sway without wind. Shadows stretch and twist on the snow. And the forest floor occasionally shifts underfoot as if breathing. Figures are glimpsed between trunks, pausing to watch before dissolving into darkness. The forest and village are intertwined, each enhancing the author's sense of mystery and presence. Crystal Pines is especially haunting at twilight. Light fades into shades of blue and silver, and the frost glows faintly, reflecting the last rays of the sun. Shadows grow long and deep, and the whispers carried by the wind intensify. The village appears almost frozen in time, every detail sharp and illuminated by the lingering glow. Movement is harder to track, and every rustle of branches or creak of ice becomes amplified, heightening the sense of being observed. Some visitors report fleeting interactions. Doors may open as they approach, only to close behind them. Steps are heard in empty cabins. Figures pass through alleyways and across streets without leaving footprints. The snow preserves nothing, yet the presence is undeniable. Crystal Pines is not just a place of frozen beauty. It is a repository of memory, emotion, and lingering spirit. Time feels altered in the village. Moments stretch, and minutes can feel like hours. The air carries a weight of history, and every sound, shadow, or movement is imbued with meaning. Each step becomes significant, part of a slow unfolding experience where perception and memory intertwine. Crystal Pines is more than a village abandoned by humans. It is a landscape of memory, shadow, and frozen emotion. Every whisper, shadow, and flicker of movement contributes to a sense that the past is present, and the living are never entirely alone. The forest, the frost, and the village work together to create a space that is beautiful, mysterious, and quietly unsettling. Would you dare to wander the streets of Crystal Pines? To hear whispers carried on the icy wind, to see shadowed figures in alleys, and to experience a village where the forest preserves echoes of lives long gone. Snowdrift Hollow lies deep in a remote valley, surrounded by dense evergreens and often buried beneath heavy snow for months on end. The village appears serene and silent by day, frozen beneath layers of ice and frost. Yet as night falls, the environment transforms. The hush of falling snow amplifies every sound, every subtle movement, creating a landscape that feels simultaneously beautiful and otherworldly. Visitors describe a sensation of stepping into a place out of time. The air feels charged, alive with memories and echoes of lives long past. Footsteps in the snow seem to appear spontaneously behind travelers. Yet when looked back upon, they vanish as though erased by invisible hands. The snow itself holds impressions that exist briefly before fading, reinforcing the feeling that the hollow itself is attentive, responsive, and subtly guiding those who enter. Lanterns often appear on porches, glowing warmly against the cold darkness, only to vanish moments later. The light seems almost intentional, casting long shadows and illuminating paths through the snow, yet offers no guidance and disappears without warning. This fleeting illumination creates an atmosphere of suspense and wonder, where each step feels both precarious and deeply engaging. Sounds in Snowdrift Hollow are peculiar and immersive. Visitors report hearing the faint melodies of children singing, their voices drifting to the night air, clear yet distant. The songs rise and fall with the wind, carrying a hauntingly melodic quality that feels both welcoming and unsettling. The voices do not seem tied to any visible source, giving the impression that the hollow itself is resonating with echoes of the past. Shadows play across snowdrifts and buildings in ways that defy normal perception. Trees bend and twist with subtle movements, creating shapes that suggest hidden forms or figures just beyond sight. Structures appear familiar yet subtly altered, as if the hollow reshapes itself in response to observation. This constant, shifting environment challenges perception, heightening awareness and creating a state of cautious curiosity. The frozen landscape amplifies every visual and auditory detail, producing fleeting patterns that appear purposeful and then dissolve. Nightfall intensifies the hollow's enigmatic qualities. Shadows lengthen, the wind shifts unpredictably, and the snow reflects faint glimmers of light in ways that are mesmerizing and eerie. The voices of children singing become more distinct. Lanterns appear more vividly, and footprints in the snow seem to materialize and vanish with increasing frequency. Every sensory detail reinforces the impression that Snowdrift Hollow is alive with unseen presence, interacting with travelers in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Time itself seems altered within the hollow. Moments stretch and compress, creating a sensation of lingering yet fleeting experience. Travelers often report a disorienting awareness that they have been walking the same path for longer than possible, or that events repeat with slight variations. The hollow imposes a rhythm on its visitors, guiding their perceptions and movements, while maintaining an air of mystery. Attempts to record or document the hollow rarely succeed in capturing its full essence. Cameras flatten depth, audio devices fail to reproduce distant melodies, and lights appear differently through lenses and to the human eye. The hollow retains its secrets, offering experiences that are personal, immersive, and fleeting. Each visit is a unique encounter, where observation, memory, and imagination converge to create a distinct narrative for every traveler. Despite its unsettling qualities, Snowdrift Hollow possesses a stark, haunting beauty. Lantern light dances across icy pathways. The hollow draws travelers into a delicate balance of awe and caution. Snowdrift Hollow is more than a village blanketed in snow. It is a place where memory, perception, and subtle phenomena converge. Singing voices, vanishing lanterns, and fleeting footprints combine to form a cinematic environment that engages the senses and the mind. Those who visit leave with lingering impressions, a sense that the hollow exists slightly outside ordinary reality, and that every journey through its frozen streets becomes part of its enduring, enigmatic story. Winter shade rests in a remote valley, surrounded by dense evergreens and snow-dusted hills. The village sits quietly, seemingly untouched by time, yet it carries an atmosphere charged with anticipation and unease. The air is crisp and biting, carrying scents of pine, frost, and damp earth. Silence dominates, but it is a deceptive stillness, pierced occasionally by the creak of old timber or the distant whisper of shifting snow. Travelers quickly sense that the village is alive in ways that go beyond the ordinary. Storms arrive suddenly, descending without warning. One moment the sky is clear, revealing pale light glinting off snow and frost, and the next, heavy clouds roll across the horizon, dimming visibility and amplifying the foresta shadows. Wind sweeps through streets and alleys, rattling shutters and tossing debris, yet often these tempests seem selective, stirring only certain corners while leaving others unervingly still. Within this shifting weather, strange lights frequently appear. They drift along rooftops, hover the edges of windows, or move through streets where no one stands. Phantom illuminations play across the snow and timber, fading when approached, leaving witnesses uncertain if they have seen reality or imagination. Doors creak open without any wind or pressure, their hinges moving as though guided by unseen hands. Shadows dart across streets and alleyways, fleeting and insubstantial, vanishing when observed directly. Occasionally, faint figures appear in doorways or between buildings, indistinct and shifting, glimpsed only from the corner of the eye. Travelers recount a sense of being followed, the air heavy with presence, yet when they turn, no one is there. The sensation is subtle but insistent, creating a lingering tension that grows as night falls and darkness deepens. Winter shade streets are narrow and uneven, lined with weathered cabins and small shops. Snow drifts accumulate along corners, muffling footsteps and amplifying the echo of distant sounds. Every step taken feels layered with history, as if the village itself recalls every passerby, visitor, and resident who once moved through its lanes. The environment seems to respond to presence, shadows deepening in some areas while receding in others, as if testing the focus and courage of those who dare to explore. Phantom lights are the most frequently reported phenomenon. They range from soft glows hovering near rooftops to bright, darting orbs that vanish upon approach. Some move deliberately along streets as if tracing the paths of long-departed villagers, while others drift randomly, creating an unsettling sense of being watched from multiple angles. The lights often appear in patterns, forming fleeting shapes that suggest figures walking together or performing tasks, yet they never solidify into tangible form. Witnesses describe awe and fear in equal measure, caught between curiosity and the instinct to flee. Shadows and winter shade play tricks on perception. They stretch and bend, appearing detached from any physical object, and often mimic movements in ways that seem almost conscious. Even in daylight, shadows behave unpredictably, shifting with the soonest angle or vanishing entirely, reinforcing the sense that winter shade exists partially outside ordinary rules of space and time. The village's abandoned homes contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Personal items remain scattered, frozen in time, hinting at lives abruptly interrupted. Dolls, furniture, and household tools are arranged as though recently used, yet untouched for decades. Visitors often report subtle sensations, a pressure on the shoulder, the brush of cold air, or an invisible presence lingering close by, intensifying the feeling that the village itself is aware of every movement. Weather continues to enhance the haunting. Snowfall can arrive suddenly, muffling sound and creating illusions of movement. Wind carries voices or whispers that seem human, yet originate from no source. Frost coats surfaces in patterns that occasionally resemble figures, faces, or hands. At night, moonlight casts elongated shadows that stretch across streets and alleys, producing fleeting images that disappear when approached. Each storm gust or quiet moment reinforces the sense that winter shade is a living, responsive space where environment, memory, and perception converge. Visitors frequently report distorted perception of time and direction. Paths feel longer than expected, buildings appear where none should be, and streets loop back in ways that defy logic. Some recount returning to a starting point multiple times despite following different routes. Snow drifts amidst obscure familiar landmarks, creating an immersive and disorienting experience. The village seems to test resolve, patience, and perception, inviting curiosity while warning against prolonged wandering. Sounds in winter shade are subtle but impactful. Footsteps echo without source, whispers seem to surround travelers, and the faint clatter of objects moving is often heard without visible cause. Childrena-esque laughter has been reported, bright yet hollow, echoing across streets where no one has lived for decades. The interplay of silence, ambient sound, and sudden noises heightens the immersive atmosphere, creating a layered sensory experience that engages both mind and imagination. Ultimately, winter shade is more than a village. It is an experience of heightened perception, where snow, shadows, phantom lights, and whispers converge to create an environment both mesmerizing and unnerving. Every traveler becomes part of its story, every step contributing to a narrative that is cinematic, immersive, and persistent. The village does not rush to reveal its secrets. It waits, subtly guiding and observing, leaving visitors with a profound sense of awe, curiosity, and lingering unease. The village does not rush to reveal its secrets. It waits, subtly guiding and observing, leaving visitors with a profound sense of awe, curiosity, and lingering unease. The village does not rush to reveal its secrets. It waits, subtly guiding and observing, leaving visitors a profound sense of awe, curiosity, and lingering unease. Crossing winter shade is to walk through history and memory intertwined. Each light, shadow, and sound becomes a thread in a larger tapestry, connecting past and present. The village's spectral energy endures in every gust of wind, every swaying lantern, and every drifting shadow. Travelers leave with impressions that linger long after footprints vanish into the snow, carrying the weight of a place where environment and spirit are inseparably linked. Every visit to winter shade is unique, a personal encounter with a landscape that is alive in subtle, unsettling ways. Snow-laden streets, phantom lights, shifting shadows, and whispered voices combine to create a haunting narrative that is cinematic, immersive, and unforgettable. Those who venture here return with stories, memories, and sensations that defy ordinary explanation, a testament to the enduring, mysterious presence that defines winter shade. Frost Vale is tucked deep within a narrow canyon, where jagged cliffs rise on either side, and the wind weaves through the icy passageways with a whispering hiss. The village itself is frozen in time. Roofs and streets glisten with layers of ice, reflecting the pale light of the winter sky. Every surface holds a frozen memory, a delicate sheen, that traps sound and light in a way. As visitors step onto the streets, footsteps echo sharply, crisp against the frozen ground. The sound seems to stretch endlessly, bouncing off buildings and canyon walls, creating the impression that the village is far larger than it truly is. With each step, there is a subtle impression of being followed, a warmth brushing past in brief flashes, as if someone or something moves alongside, unseen. Windows are coated in frost, their glass shimmering with intricate patterns that catch the light. Occasionally, a flicker appears in reflection, a shadow passing by where none should exist. Doors that should be still creak gently, responding to an invisible hand. The sense of presence is palpable, both comforting and unsettling, as though the village itself remembers those who once walked its streets. The faint smell of smoke drifts through the frozen air, yet no chimneys burn. The smell lingers like a memory, sweet and sharp, carrying the essence of long-extinguished fires. The aroma blends with the cold, creating a sensation of warmth and nostalgia that vanishes almost as soon as it arrives. Travelers often pause, inhaling deeply, feeling the pull of a past life embedded within the frost. The pull of a past life. Whispers ride on the wind, soft and indistinct, sometimes calling a name or forming words that dissolve before they can be understood. The voices seem to come from every direction, yet never directly. They float across rooftops and down alleys, fading into the sound of the wind over ice. Listening closely, visitors feel as though the village is trying to communicate, offering secrets just beyond comprehension. Lanterns, though unlit by any flame, occasionally glow with a faint, ethereal light. The illumination is soft and fleeting, casting shadows that twist unnaturally across the frozen walls. Each shadow stretches and bends as if alive, reacting to the movement of those who walk among them. A simple glance over a shoulder is enough to catch the tail of a shadow vanishing into a corner where no one stands. Buildings lean slightly with age, their wooden beams groaning under the weight of ice and snow. Floorboards creak with invisible steps, responding to visitors as if the village itself tests each arrival. Hallways feel longer than they should, corners seem to shift imperceptibly, and doors that were closed moments ago may stand ajar without explanation. Every element contributes to the sensation that Frostvale exists both in this world and another, caught between time and memory. The frozen streets wind and turn unpredictably. Familiar paths appear unfamiliar. Alleys loop back upon themselves, and open squares seem to stretch into infinity. Travelers often feel disoriented, their sense of direction challenged by subtle changes that go unnoticed at first. The village has a rhythm, a silent pulse that guides or misleads depending on the observer, keeping every visitor attentive and wary. Sounds carry with strange clarity, amplified by the ice and snow. A gust of wind may sound like laughter. A branch snapping under snow may resemble a footstep. Even silence is heavy, filled with potential and anticipation. The quiet is not empty, but layered, as though the air itself remembers every sound that has ever passed through the village. Snowfall transforms Frostvale into a world of illusions. Each flake reflects light differently, creating the impression of movement even when still. Footprints appear and vanish, sometimes leading to empty spaces or frozen doors. Travelers find their eyes drawn constantly to fleeting glimpses of light or movement, never fully certain whether what they see is real or a trick of frost and shadow. The village elicits both fear and fascination. It invites exploration yet commands respect. Every sound, shadow, and sensation is amplified by the cold and stillness, creating an atmosphere where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Travelers walk cautiously, attuned to every nuance, aware that the smallest detail may hold meaning, yet knowing that the village will never fully reveal its secrets. Even in daylight, Frostvale retains a sense of mystery. The sun reflects off the icy streets in harsh brilliance. Yet shadows twist in unexpected ways. Windows and doorways seem to pulse with faint energy, and reflections sometimes show figures that do not exist. Each experience feels ephemeral, impossible to capture, yet deeply affecting for those who encounter it. Visitors leave with memories that linger long after departure. The echo of footsteps, the brush of invisible presence, the smell of phantom smoke, and the fleeting warmth in the frozen air all remain imprinted on the senses. Frostvale becomes more than a place. It exists in recollection, a village both real and imagined, frozen in time yet alive with memory and mystery. Frostvale endures as a landscape of paradoxes. It is cold yet occasionally warm, silent yet filled with whispers, empty yet undeniably present. Its frozen streets, shifting shadows, and fleeting sensations ensure that anyone who walks its icy paths carries a piece of its haunting beauty with them forever, a reminder of a village suspended between worlds, where every glance, every sound, and every step holds the potential for discovery and wonder. Glacier Hollow rests in a valley encircled by towering cliffs, their icy faces reflecting pale light across the frozen landscape. The village, once a haven for settlers, now lies abandoned. Every structure seems frozen in time, yet the air is alive with a presence that defies explanation. Visitors report fleeting figures scaling rooftops, moving with unnatural grace, only to vanish into thick snowdrifts below. Shadows slip along the edges of alleys and streets, never fully seen but unmistakably there. The hollow seems to breathe, the wind carrying movement and whispers, creating an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and unnerving. Cabins glow faintly as lanterns ignite without hands. Windows flicker with light that dances across snow-covered interiors, casting long, shifting shadows. Doors creak softly, opening or closing on their own, It is as if the village itself is aware of intruders, acknowledging them with subtle signs and fleeting glimpses of life that no longer belongs here. The wind carries voices that call names long forgotten, echoing across streets and alleyways. Sometimes the sounds are faint, barely audible over the gusts, and other times they are clear, calling directly to visitors. The effect is both haunting and hypnotic, creating a sense that the past is never far beneath the surface, ready to reach through the cold and frost. The cliffs surrounding Glacier Hollow add to its isolation. Shadows fall in deep, long patterns, making the frozen streets appear endless. Snowdrifts pile high along pathways, and each step taken by travelers is met with an eerie stillness. Even distant sounds seem magnified, carrying through the hollow with an unnatural clarity. Those who explore the village speak of the uncanny stillness between moments of activity. A lantern may ignite, a shadow may dart past, and then all is quiet again. The silence is heavy, almost tangible, as if the village is holding its breath, waiting to reveal something just beyond perception. Every creaking board and shifting snowflake feels purposeful, part of a rhythm set long ago and maintained by unseen hands. Lanterns in the streets sometimes light as visitors pass, only to extinguish moments later. Windows glow as if occupied, but the interiors remain empty. Figures are glimpsed inside, standing or moving with deliberate intention, yet vanish the instant they are fully observed. The hollow seems to preserve these images, allowing them to drift through space and time like phantoms of memory. The snow itself carries impressions of the past. Footprints appear briefly and then vanish, leaving no trace. The wind sculpts the drifts into shapes that suggest movement, shadows frozen in the ice. Trees bend under the weight of snow, their limbs creaking in the cold, adding to the chorus of sounds that fills the hollow. Every element of Glacier Hollow participates in its subtle, spectral life. Visitors often describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, a feeling that eyes are tracking each step. It is not a hostile presence, but an awareness, a reminder that the hollow remembers. Every cabin, alley, and rooftop seems to hold fragments of life that linger, echoes of those who once called this place home. The effect is both captivating and disorienting, making it difficult to discern reality from vision. Twilight in Glacier Hollow is especially striking. Pale light filters through the cliffs, casting elongated shadows that stretch across streets and rooftops. Lanterns ignite spontaneously, highlighting frost patterns and wooden textures, creating a landscape that feels simultaneously real and otherworldly. Shadows deepen, and the whispers grow more insistent, carrying across the frozen hollow as if the past itself is awakening. The hollow seems to exist in a layer of time separate from the outside world. Moments expand and contract, and the boundaries between the living and those who linger are blurred. Figures may appear for seconds or minutes, their presence fleeting yet indelible. The wind, the snow, the light, and the shadows all interact to form a living tapestry, one that tells stories without words and preserves memory without form. Every corner of Glacier Hollow holds possibility for encounter. A lantern glimmering through frost, a fleeting figure on a rooftop, or a whisper on the wind is enough to make the hair rise on the back of the neck. Visitors feel both awe and unease, captivated by the beauty yet unsettled by the undeniable sense of presence. The village is a frozen monument to life that once thrived and the spirits that remain, invisible yet undeniable. Would you dare to walk through Glacier Hollow, to hear voices carried on the icy wind, to witness shadows darting across snow-covered rooftops, and to feel the weight of memory pressing against the stillness of the frozen streets? Ice Mist Village lies hidden within a remote valley, often swallowed by thick fog that drifts across snow-covered roofs and frozen paths. By day, the village appears serene, its cabins blanketed in frost, chimneys exhaling thin trails of smoke that vanish into the pale sky. Yet as night descends, the atmosphere transforms, and the familiar becomes strange, as if the fog itself carries a consciousness that watches and moves with purpose. Travelers approaching the village report a subtle tension in the air, a sensation of being observed. Shadowy figures slip between the cabins, halting briefly to watch before melting back into the mist. Their movements are silent and fluid, yet unmistakably deliberate. The figures rarely linger in one place, and when noticed directly, they vanish as though dissolving into the fog itself. This fleeting presence creates an unsettling mix of curiosity and unease. Doors creak without wind, and windows rattle despite the still air. The faint echo of footsteps follows travelers through narrow lanes, sometimes aligning perfectly with their own pace before fading away. Even the soft crunch of snow underfoot seems amplified, reverberating against unseen walls, creating an auditory landscape that is both immersive and disorienting. Each sound feels purposeful, as though the village itself is alive and responsive to the presence of outsiders. Phantom laughter drifts through the snow, light yet chilling, weaving among the cabins like a hidden current. The laughter rises and falls unpredictably, at times seeming close enough to touch, and at others, distant and hollow. The laughter carries no identifiable source, heightening the impression that the village exists beyond ordinary perception. Travelers often feel an invisible tension at their shoulders, a subtle nudge urging them onward, while keeping them alert to the unseen. Icy fingers brush against travelers' arms, slipping through gloves and layers as though the cold has a consciousness of its own. The sensation is fleeting but unmistakable, leaving an impression that is both chilling and impossible to rationalize. Even in the midst of frozen landscapes, the touch conveys awareness, an interaction that is intimate yet distant. Visitors report feeling watched and guided simultaneously, as if the village itself negotiates the pace and path of every journey through its fog-laden streets. Light behaves differently within Icemas Village. Lanterns and faint interior lights flicker unpredictably, casting shadows that stretch and twist along snow-laden ground. And cabin walls. Reflections on ice and frost create shapes that seem familiar yet subtly altered, producing a sense of disorientation that blends the real with the imagined. Even the moonlight struggles to penetrate the fog fully, adding depth and texture to the village and enhancing the eerie, cinematic quality of the environment. Footprints appear behind travelers, crisp and well-defined in freshly fallen snow, only to vanish when looked upon directly. Paths seem to shift subtly, drawing attention to particular streets or alleys, and often returning visitors to points they have already passed. The subtle manipulation of movement reinforces the sense that the village responds to the presence of those who enter, guiding and testing them with quiet, almost imperceptible hand. Sound in Icemas Village is a complex interplay of the natural and the inexplicable. The rustle of wind through frost-laden branches mingles with faint echoes of footsteps, doors, and laughter. The frozen river nearby contributes a low, constant hum, punctuated by cracking ice that resonates across the landscape. Every element interacts to create a sensory environment that is immersive and unnerving, heightening awareness and focusing attention on the interplay between perception and reality. Night deepens the experience, intensifying shadows and amplifying phenomena. Figures in the fog appear closer, doors creak more insistently, and the laughter seems to circle, surrounding travelers in the cold and silence. Even familiar routes take on unfamiliar qualities, as if the village stretches and contracts, subtly altering the spatial relationship between structures. The fog thickens, obscuring paths and creating moments where visibility becomes minimal, demanding careful attention and producing a heightened sense of tension. Attempt to capture Icemas Village with cameras or audio recordings rarely succeed. Depth is flattened, whispers are lost, and the interplay of light, fog, and shadow cannot be fully reproduced. The village retains its mysteries for those present, offering experiences that are unique, ephemeral, and deeply personal. Every journey through the fog becomes a narrative of observation, sensation, and memory, an encounter with an environment that defies conventional understanding. Despite its eerie qualities, Icemas Village possesses a stark, haunting beauty. Frost-covered roofs glisten under dim light. Shadows dance across snow and ice. The fog adds texture and depth to every scene. The village draws travelers into a delicate balance of fascination and caution, urging them to observe and respect the environment. while navigating the uncertainty of their surroundings. Ice Mist Village is more than a remote settlement blanketed in snow and fog. It is a space where perception, memory, and subtle phenomena converge to create an immersive, enigmatic experience. Shadowy figures, phantom laughter, shifting shadows, and icy touches combine to engage the senses and the mind. Visitors leave with lasting impressions, a heightened awareness of the unusual, and the understanding that every journey through the village becomes part of Ice Mista's enduring, mysterious story. Winterbrook rests quietly along a frozen creek, its waters locked beneath a thick sheet of ice that glimmers under the pale winter sun. The trees lining the banks are skeletal, their branches clawing at the gray sky, and the snow crunches sharply underfoot. The village itself seems suspended in time, quiet and still, yet there is a subtle pulse in the air, as if the frozen landscape holds its own secrets, waiting for those who venture close enough to sense them. The ice on the creek often reveals ghostly reflections. Figures appear on the surface, distant and indistinct, moving slowly as if trapped beneath the frozen water. When approached, the images vanish, leaving only the clear, cold surface of the ice. Travelers describe feeling watched, a presence hovering just beyond sight. Shadows shift in peripheral vision, moving in ways that defy logic. Every step along the frozen banks seems to stir whispers in the wind, faint and fleeting, yet impossible to ignore. The chill in Winterbrook is relentless. It seeps through clothing and bone, biting and penetrating, as though the air itself carries a memory of the past. Sounds are amplified in this frozen environment. Footsteps echo unnaturally across snow and ice, often following travelers long after they have moved. Doors open without wind, creaking slowly on ancient hinges, and the faint scent of smoke from long-extinguished fires sometimes drifts through the air. Every element of the village contributes to the sense that the place is alive in ways beyond the ordinary. Lanterns sway along empty streets, casting wavering light over snowdrifts and icy rooftops. Their glow illuminates fleeting shapes that appear at the edge of vision and vanish when focused upon. Hikers and explorers report a disorienting sense of movement, where trails shift subtly, turning familiar paths into unfamiliar corridors. The creek itself seems to guide visitors, sometimes narrowing, sometimes widening, as if aware of every step taken along its banks. The interplay between ice, shadow, and sound creates a landscape that is both beautiful and unsettling. Figures seen in reflections or glimpsed between trees rarely hold form. They are vague and shifting, sometimes appearing as a person, other times as a silhouette that bends unnaturally. Some travelers claim to have seen children playing along the banks, their laughter light yet hollow, fading into the wind before recognition. Others have reported shadowy adults watching silently from the edges of trees, their presence subtle but unmistakable. The longer one remains in Winterbrook, the more intense these sensations become, each step revealing new mysteries while deepening the sense of unease. The frozen creek holds more than reflections. Broken branches, snow-laden rocks, and hidden eddies seem to store the memory of past events. Ice fractures occasionally, sending sharp, echoing cracks across the village, and these sounds often coincide with fleeting glimpses of movement, as though the landscape responds to disturbances in its stillness. Travelers report feeling invisible hands brushing along their arms or tugging at coats, a reminder that the cold is not the only force at work. Every encounter, no matter how brief, reinforces the feeling that Winterbrook watches, listens, and remembers. Footpaths winding away from the creek are equally enigmatic. Snow covers signs of human activity, masking old trails, and creating loops that seem impossible to escape. Some report returning to the same location multiple times, despite following different routes, the environment appearing to shift subtly with each step. Trees bend and twist in ways that seem unnatural, their shadows stretching and retracting with a life of their own. Whispers float on the wind, sometimes forming words, other times leaving only impressions of conversation, prompting visitors to wonder if the village itself speaks, in a language only partially understood. Night in Winterbrook intensifies the phenomena. Moonlight reflects off ice and snow, elongating shadows, creating phantom shapes that move across streets and frozen water. Lanterns glow brighter in the dark, revealing glimpses of forms that disappear when approached. The wind carries faint voices, footsteps, and the sound of doors opening and closing without anyone near. The village transforms into a living tableau of mystery, where perception, memory, and imagination blend seamlessly. Visitors frequently report disorientation and subtle alterations of perception. Trails appear longer, buildings emerge where none existed, and the creek sometimes seems to bend unnaturally. Time feels distorted, with hours slipping by unnoticed or moments stretching into eternity. These experiences are often accompanied by an overwhelming sense of being observed, a presence that lingers just out of reach, watching and responding to every action. Even the most rational explorers find themselves questioning the limits of reality within Winterbrook. Despite the chilling air and eerie occurrences, the village holds a strange beauty. The frozen creek sparkles under sunlight or moonlight, and the skeletal trees cast intricate shadows. The combination of natural splendor and supernatural suggestion captivates visitors, drawing them deeper into the landscape, while simultaneously prompting caution. Every frozen surface, every flicker of light, and every whispered sound contributes to a layered narrative that is immersive, cinematic, and unforgettable. Winterbrook is a place where history, memory, and spectral energy converge. Ghostly reflections, shifting shadows, phantom sounds, and the biting chill create an environment that is simultaneously mesmerizing and disquieting. Travelers leave with impressions that linger long after footprints fade from snow, carrying with them the sense that the village is more than a location. It is an experience, an encounter with a landscape that is alive, responsive, and profoundly mysterious. Every visit to Winterbrook becomes a story in itself, a personal encounter with a place where ice, shadows, and whispers merge. The frozen creek, the swaying lanterns, and the shifting trails are more than sceneria. They are elements of a living, breathing narrative that challenges perception and evokes wonder. Travelers emerge changed, aware that the village holds secrets beyond comprehension, and that even the simplest step across its snowy paths may carry the weight of unseen memories and lingering presences. Winterbrook endures as a testament to the haunting beauty of the natural world intertwined with the supernatural. Each shadow, each reflection, and each whispered sound reinforces the sense that this frozen village is alive in ways that defy understanding, leaving visitors with stories, sensations, and memories that persist long after departure. Frost Glen is hidden deep within a dense pine forest, where the trees rise like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow. The wind threads the pines with a low, moaning sigh, carrying the faint scent of pine resin and frozen earth. The village lies tucked in a clearing, almost invisible until the last light of day catches the glimmer of frost on rooftops and frozen windows. Lanterns swing gently along empty streets, their faint glow illuminating the thick layers of snow beneath. The light flickers as if caught in a ghostly breath, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls of deserted homes. Windows glow softly, revealing interiors frozen in moments, chairs slightly askew, doors left ajar, and the lingering presence of lives once lived. Figures move fleetingly across the village, glimpsed in the corner of the eye, vanishing when attention turns fully toward them. The village seems to replay the rhythm of life and death simultaneously. Footsteps echo on the snow, though no one walks the streets. The distant clatter of shutters closing and opening drifts from abandoned homes, carried by the wind. Occasionally, a soft murmur or faint laughter floats through the air, a sound both comforting and unsettling, as though the village itself whispers its memories to anyone who listens closely enough. The pines around Frost Glen act as both guardians and observers, their branches creaking and groaning in the wind, each sound amplified in the cold air. Travelers feel watched, as though invisible eyes trace their movements, studying their reactions. Shadows shift unnaturally among the trees, appearing and disappearing in moments, leaving the mind uncertain of what is real and what belongs to the forest as imagination. Lanterns inside houses sometimes swing violently without cause. The snow outside crunches as if underfoot, yet no footprints remain. Occasionally, doors that were closed moments before are found standing wide open, revealing rooms empty of human presence, yet alive with subtle energy. The village seems to breathe, inhaling and exhaling to the frozen streets, responding to those who dare enter its domain. Windows capture reflections that are not only its own. Visitors glimpse fleeting figures looking back, dressed in long coats and scarves, frozen mid-motion, their expressions unreadable. Sometimes a reflection shows nothing at all, leaving only the faint glow of lanterns behind. The phenomenon is unpredictable, yet persistent, hinting at a world layered over the tangible, a frost glen that exists in parallel with the reality of snow and timber. The village's atmosphere is heightened by the ever-present fog that drifts through the streets and clings to the pines. Shapes form in the mist, sometimes resembling villagers going about their daily routines, other times taking on darker, indistinct forms. The fog softens sound, turning the crunch of snow underfoot into a muted echo, and carries whispers that are always just beyond comprehension. Each moment feels suspended, caught between time and memory, inviting visitors to witness a world paused yet alive. Even in the quietest hours, Frost Glen is never truly silent. The wind carries subtle melodies of long-past moments, the creak of a rocking chair, the faint scrape of a sled over ice, the distant chime of a bell. These sounds layer over one another, creating a haunting symphony that evokes both nostalgia and unease. Visitors often pause, straining to catch each detail, aware that every sound may have a story, a trace of life long since vanished. The snow itself seems to hold memory. Footprints appear briefly, leading nowhere, vanishing as if erased by an invisible hand. Occasionally, patterns form in the frost, shapes that resemble figures frozen mid-step, leaving those who witness them with an inexplicable sense of recognition. Frost Glen does not allow casual observation. It demands awareness, patience, and the willingness to perceive what lingers between the physical and the unseen. Buildings lean slightly with age, their timbers groaning under the weight of snow and frost. Chimneys are capped with ice, roofs bowed but unbroken, as though the structures themselves are enduring long after human presence has faded. Rooms are frozen in fragments of time, a chair tipped over, a window cracked, a coat left hanging on a peg. A chair tipped over, a window cracked, a coat left hanging on a peg. These remnants of life evoke curiosity, yet also caution, a reminder that Frost Glen preserves moments for reasons beyond comprehension. The village seems to interact with those who enter. Lanterns sway in response to movement, shadows stretch toward the edges of vision, and sudden gusts of cold brush across the neck or arms without explanation. The experience is personal and immersive, leaving travelers acutely aware of both the environment and the unseen presences inhabiting it. Frost Glen tests perception, challenging the mind to distinguish between the tangible and the spectral. Challenging the mind to distinguish between the tangible and the spectral. Frost Glen tests perception, challenging the mind to distinguish between the tangible and the spectral. Frost Glen's charm is in its balance of beauty and unease. Snow-laden streets glisten under the moonlight, and the forest beyond is mesmerizing in its silent majesty. The forest beyond is mesmerizing in its silent majesty. Yet the village carries an undeniable weight. Yet the village carries an undeniable weight, a feeling of being observed by those who came before. A feeling of being observed by those who came before. Every whisper of wind, flicker of lantern light. Every whisper of wind, flicker of lantern light, and fleeting figure reinforces the sense that Frost Glen is a living memory, a place where the past continues to unfold for those willing to witness it. Visitors leave Frost Glen carrying impressions that linger far beyond the village itself. The echo of footsteps, glimpses of shadowy figures, and the subtle warmth in the cold air. Frost Glen becomes more than a village, a haunting memory of moments caught between life and afterlife, frozen in snow yet endlessly alive. Frost Glen endures as a landscape where the ordinary and the supernatural coexist. Its lantern-lit streets, shifting shadows, and frozen windows tell stories without words, inviting those who enter to perceive carefully, listen intently, and move respectfully. Carries potential for discovery, wonder, and an encounter with the echoes of life that remain eternally present in this hidden, snowy village. Shaded Pines lies nestled between towering evergreens, a village that seems frozen in time. Its streets are narrow and winding, lined with snow-covered rooftops and frosted windows. The air is crisp and still, yet there's a sense that the quiet is fragile, always on the verge of being broken by something unseen. A feeling of being watched even in the daylight, stretching and bending in ways that defy natural light, where the familiar becomes uncertain and the silence carries its own weight. Shadowy figures are frequently glimpsed wandering the streets, their forms indistinct yet unmistakable. Some appear to mimic visitors, following their movements, pausing when they pause, vanishing when looked at directly. Their presence is fleeting, yet deeply unsettling, as if the village itself plays with perception, testing the courage of those who enter its frozen paths. Faint laughter drifts through the air, high-pitched and echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. The sound seems to rise from the snow itself, carried on gusts of wind that curl around corners and through narrow lanes. Sometimes cries follow, low and mournful, seeming to call for something lost or someone who never left. The wind in Shaded Pines carries whispers that follow travelers as they explore. Words are never clear, but the cadence feels deliberate, as though the voices remember names and events long past. Each step through the village is accompanied by subtle movements in the periphery, a shadow shifting behind a tree, the glint of light reflecting from snow where nothing exists, a feeling that the landscape itself is alive with memory. Buildings appear to breathe with the wind, their wooden frames creaking softly. Chimneys exhaling cold smoke without fire. Lanterns occasionally ignite along streets, casting pale light over frost-laden paths. Before extinguishing moments later, windows catch the glow briefly, illuminating empty rooms where shadows seem to linger longer than natural time allows. The village becomes a stage where unseen actors replay fragments of lives long gone. On streets that should be silent, yet when they turn, the path remains empty. Subtle depressions and traces that vanish as quickly as they appear, blending them into a single, disorienting experience. Travelers describe glimpsing figures at windows or standing among trees, shapes that are human in outline but ethereal in substance. These fleeting visions leave a lingering impression, a sense of connection to something just beyond comprehension, a reminder that the village exists both in this world and another. At night, the atmosphere thickens with anticipation. The air is heavier, the shadows deeper, and the sounds more distinct. Whispers and laughter intertwine with the wind. Footsteps echo unnaturally, and lights flicker across the streets without source. Each moment feels like a test, a subtle invitation to observe and participate in the ongoing rhythm of the village. Those who linger report a sensation of time stretching, moments elongating as if the village itself dictates the flow of reality. Those who linger report a sensation of time stretching, moments elongating as if the village itself dictates the flow of reality. The landscape of Shaded Pines is equally enigmatic. Trees bend in the wind, their skeletal branches forming shapes that seem alive, reaching toward the sky or toward the paths below. Every feature of the village contributes to the sense that one is not merely walking through a physical space, but through layers of memory, presence, and lingering life. Even when the village is empty of visitors, Shaded Pines maintains its eerie vitality. Lanterns light without hands. Doors shift in their frames, and shadows glide across snow-dusted roofs, as though the village itself cannot remain silent. Each gust, each subtle movement, reinforces the feeling that Shaded Pines is aware, watching, and waiting. Those who venture into Shaded Pines leave changed. They carry with them a sense of something half-seen and half-remembered, a lingering unease mingled with fascination. The village etches itself into memory, not through overt menace, but through subtle, persistent interaction with all who enter. Every step is a reminder of the delicate boundary between the living and the unseen, and the presence that walks alongside, hidden yet undeniably there. Would you dare to wander through shaded pines, to feel the brush of unseen hands, to hear whispers carried on the wind, and to witness shadows that mirror your every movement? Icefall Hollow rests beneath towering frozen cliffs, a village carved into shadow of jagged ice and rock. By day, the settlement appears still and abandoned, roofs heavy with snow, and windows dark and lifeless. Yet as twilight approaches, the hollow transforms, revealing an atmosphere both mesmerizing and unsettling. Mist drifts unnaturally through the streets, curling around cabins and trees, concealing and revealing shapes with every shift of wind. Travelers who enter Icefall Hollow report sensations that defy ordinary perception. Lights flicker in empty cabins, sometimes visible through frost-laden windows, and then vanish as if extinguished by an unseen hand. Footsteps echo across snow-covered streets, mirroring those of visitors. Yet when turned to investigate, the sound ceases, leaving only the quiet of the frozen village. This persistent feeling of being observed creates a tension that is subtle but inescapable, drawing attention to every movement and shadow. The village seems to manipulate space itself. Paths that were clear moments before appear altered, alleys and streets shifting subtly under layers of snow. Travelers speak of returning to points they have already passed, encountering cabins in unfamiliar arrangements, feeling as though Icefall Hollow is alive with intent, shaping the journey of anyone who dares to walk its frozen lanes. The phenomenon is disorienting, heightening the sense of both wonder and caution. The sense of wonder, the sense of caution. Shadows play across the snow in ways that defy expectation. They stretch and bend around corners, moving with a rhythm independent of any light source. Figures appear at the edge of vision, humanoid yet indistinct, vanishing when confronted. Even familiar objects seem transformed, their proportions subtly altered by the interplay of mist, snow, and reflected light. Observers describe an eerie beauty in these distortions, a visual poetry that captivates even as it unsettles. Sounds in Icefall Hollow are amplified by the stillness of snow and ice. The crunch of footsteps echoes further than anticipated, and the wind carries whispers that seem to originate from the village itself. Doors creak and windows rattle without wind, producing a spectral symphony that merges with natural sounds to create an immersive auditory environment. The combination of echoes, soft murmurs, and the distant hum of shifting ice contributes to the sense that the hollow is attentive, aware of those who traverse it. Mist further enhances the surreal qualities of the village. Thick, low-hanging fog coils around structures, obscuring familiar landmarks and creating a mutable landscape. Shadows appear and dissolve, and shapes within the mist suggest movement where none exists. The fog often guides perception, drawing attention to certain streets or cabins while hiding others, producing an experience that is simultaneously disorienting and mesmerizing. Night intensifies the phenomena. Frozen streets glisten under the pale light of the moon, and the interplay of mist and shadow deepens. Lights appear in unexpected places. Footsteps seem to follow more closely. An illusion of shifting structures becomes more pronounced. Every sensory detail is heightened, reinforcing the impression that Icefall Hollow exists outside ordinary reality, a space where perception and environment interact in subtle, deliberate ways. Even attempts to document the village are limited in effectiveness. Cameras flatten depth. Audio equipment struggles to capture whispers and echoes, and the intricate play of mist, snow, and shadow is lost through lenses. The hollow retains its mysteries for those present, offering experiences that are ephemeral and deeply personal. Each journey becomes a unique narrative, shaped by observation, memory, and the subtle guidance of the environment. Despite its eerie qualities, Icefall Hollow possesses a stark, haunting beauty. Snow-laden rooftops glisten under moonlight. Icicles hang like fragile chandeliers from eaves, and mist flows like liquid silver through streets and alleyways. Shadows interact with the environment to produce ever-changing patterns. and the frozen cliffs above create a protective yet imposing presence. The village draws travelers into a balance of awe and caution, engaging both the senses and the imagination. Icefall Hollow is more than a village beneath frozen cliffs. It is a convergence of perception, memory, and subtle, unexplained phenomena that creates a fully immersive experience. Lights that vanish, footsteps that echo without source, shifting streets and drifting mist combine to form a living environment that captivates and unnerves. Travelers leave with lasting impressions, a heightened awareness of the extraordinary, and the understanding that every journey through Icefall Hollow becomes part of the village's enduring and enigmatic story. Snowvale Village lies hidden deep within a remote valley, often buried beneath heavy drifts of snow that blanket the landscape in silence. The air is cold and still, carrying the sharp scent of pine and frost. The village appears frozen in time, a place where every house, street, and fence seems to have been abandoned suddenly, yet retains an eerie sense of presence. Travelers who venture here often speak of a sensation that the village is watching, waiting for the curious to approach. Lights flicker faintly from abandoned homes, as if someone still occupies them. Shadows dance behind windows, but when visitors draw closer, nothing remains. Footsteps are heard crunching in the snow, sometimes approaching, sometimes retreating, yet when investigated, the snow shows no sign of disturbance. Whispers follow intruders, urging them to turn back, carrying tones of warning and faint sorrow. Every sound, every shadow, seems amplified in the hush that blankets the village. The paths through Snowvale are winding and treacherous, often obscured by fresh snow or drifts that rise like walls. Buildings lean slightly, their wooden frames groaning under the weight of ice and snow. Travelers report that familiar landmarks shift subtly as they move, leaving them disoriented. Lanterns and old lamps, long extinguished, sometimes glow faintly, illuminating fleeting figures that vanish as soon as they are noticed. The village itself seems alive, guiding visitors along paths that are as much psychological as they are physical. Windows frequently reveal figures, stationary or gliding slowly. Some appear as adults, others as children playing silently in the snow. The wind carries whispers in a language that is almost recognizable, fragmented words and syllables suggesting stories long forgotten. It is as though the village remembers its past inhabitants, replaying moments in an eternal loop for those who linger. Footprints that appear behind travelers are a common experience. They are deep and clear, yet when looked at closely, the snow beneath is untouched, pristine and undisturbed. Some have tried to follow these prints, but they often lead nowhere, fading into the drift or leading back to the spot they started from. This creates a disorienting sense of being watched and manipulated, heightening the tension and unease. Even the boldest explorers find themselves second-guessing their senses, questioning whether what they see and hear is real or conjured by the village itself. The architecture of Snowvale adds to its haunting character. Wooden cabins with steep roofs sag under the weight of snow, and chimneys release faint puffs of smoke without any visible source. Doors creak open and shut with no wind, and the soft scuff of invisible feet echoes across empty streets. Every creak, whisper, and shadow contributes to an atmosphere that is immersive and unnerving, yet strangely captivating. Visitors describe the sensation of the village observing them, its unseen eyes measuring every step and pause. Snowvale's forests surrounding the village enhance the mystery. Tall pines stand like sentinels, their branches heavy with frost, and snow muffles sound to an unnatural degree. Figures are often glimpsed between trunks, vanishing as soon as one focuses on them. The forest edges seem to breathe with the village, creating a continuous interplay between open streets and wooded perimeters. Travelers moving through the trees report sudden drops in temperature, brief glimpses of light, and whispers that drift from seemingly nowhere, intensifying the feeling of being part of a world suspended between reality and illusion. Time itself seems distorted within Snowvale. Hours pass unnoticed, the sun rising and falling with fluidity that confuses observers. Snow accumulates in ways that appear inconsistent, drifting into freshly walked paths and reshaping trails. The interplay of snow, light, shadow, and memory creates an environment where perception is unreliable, and every moment holds a potential for surprise or unease. The village's frozen landscape reflects light in unusual ways. Moonlight glimmers across icy rooftops and snowdrifts, casting shadows that move independently of objects. Lanterns, both real and spectral, illuminate fleeting glimpses of figures in motion. Some witnesses claim to see children playing along the frozen creek that runs through the village. Yet the creek remains frozen and empty when approached. Adults appear briefly near windows, only to vanish when approached. The phenomenon leaves a lingering impression that the village exists on multiple planes simultaneously, part reality and part memory. Sound is especially prominent in Snowvale. Wind carries distant laughter, faint cries, and the unmistakable creak of doors and floorboards. Whispers seem to echo in every direction, sometimes responding to the thoughts or actions of those who listen. Travelers report that the noises can seem to originate from within themselves, amplifying attention and creating an intimate, unsettling experience. Even silence carries weight, as if the absence of sound is another layer of the Village's presence. Visitors often leave Snowvale changed, carry with them the sense of having traversed a space both tangible and spectral. Memories of the village linger long after departure, manifesting in dreams or fleeting images in the corner of vision. Snowvale is not merely a place to visit. It is a place to experience, where the interaction of light, shadow, whisper, and snow create a narrative that is ongoing and alive. Each step through the village, each glance at a flickering window or glimmering figure, becomes part of a story that refuses to end. The haunting of Snowvale is quiet, subtle, and persistent. Every flicker of light, every shadow across the snow, and every whisper in the wind reinforces the presence of the village as more than abandoned structures. It is alive in memory, atmosphere, and perception, leaving visitors with profound awareness that they have walked among something unseen. The snow, the lights, and the whispers converge to create a landscape of chilling beauty and immersive mystery. In the end, Snowvale Village remains a frozen testament to the enduring power of memory, atmosphere, and spectral presence. It is a place where snow, shadow, and whispers intertwine, inviting travelers to witness its mysteries, while leaving them with a sense of wonder, unease, and a story to carry forward long after leaving its frozen streets. Winter Pine Hollow rests deep within a forest of frost-laden pines, where the branches bend under the weight of snow, and the air carries a crisp, biting chill. The village is hidden from the outside world, its streets narrow and lined with cabins coated in frost. Shadows slip silently across the snow-covered roads and the walls of homes, appearing and disappearing with unsettling suddenness. Lanterns flicker to life along hallways and empty streets, casting a warm glow that seems almost alive, moving slightly as if breathing. Figures are glimpsed at the edges of vision, just beyond clear view. They vanish the moment one turns to focus on them, leaving only the faint impression of movement. Travelers speak of an awareness, a sensation of being observed, as if unseen eyes are tracing every step and pause. The air carries subtle sounds that do not belong to the living. Footsteps crunch lightly on fresh snow where no one walks, and doors creak as though someone has passed through. Occasionally, the wind carries whispers, soft and fragmented, sometimes echoing through empty cabins, other times drifting through the streets like the faint sigh of a forgotten memory. Every sound is magnified in the stillness, leaving the senses heightened and the imagination on edge. Winter Pine Hollow appears frozen in time. Snow rests thick on rooftops and windowsills, undisturbed except by the fleeting movements of unseen entities. Occasionally, a lantern swings without cause, illuminating a room where nothing stirs. The effect is both beautiful and unsettling. A delicate interplay of light and shadow, warmth and cold, presence and absence. Travelers often report the sensation of being touched by unseen hands. Coats tug at shoulders. Hair brushes against faces without wind. and icy fingers seem to trace along arms. It is subtle, never violent, but impossible to ignore. The village itself feels alive, as if the snow, the trees, and the buildings are extensions of a consciousness that watches quietly, testing perception and nerve. Cabins hold traces of the people who once lived there or perhaps never left. Windows glow faintly even when unlit, revealing silhouettes moving behind frosted glass. Some travelers swear they see figures arranging furniture, opening drawers, or walking across rooms, only for the scenes to vanish when approached. The village seems to perform for those who enter, replaying moments from an unseen world layered atop the physical space. Paths in Winterpine Hollow are deceptive. Streets loop unexpectedly. Snow drifts obscure familiar markers. And cabins appear in places where none were seen before. Visitors may retrace steps only to find themselves facing an entirely different street or doorway. The forest surrounding the village seems to bend with the hollow, guiding travelers subtly, sometimes coaxing them deeper into the unknown. Sounds of the forest merge with the village in ways that blur reality. Pines creak and sway, snow slides softly from branches, and distant animal calls echo strangely in the still air. Every noise carries a double meaning, interpreted both naturally and supernaturally, creating a tension that keeps senses alert. Travelers move cautiously, aware that every rustle or shadow may be more than coincidence. The hollow's charm is in its contradictions. It is breathtakingly beautiful, with the silver sheen of frost on every surface, and the quiet majesty of snow-covered trees. Yet it is undeniably eerie, populated by shadows, glimpses, and sensations that defy logical explanation. The experience is immersive, leaving those who visit both awed and unnerved. Even in the heart of night, Winterpine Hollow remains alive. Snow reflects a faint lantern light, creating an otherworldly glow along streets and across cabins. Travelers report feeling pressure in the air, as though the village inhales and exhales around them, a rhythm that is felt more than heard. Every step taken carries the weight of unseen observation. Windows often capture reflections that figures appear frozen mid-motion, looking out, or walking through spaces that are empty in reality. Occasionally, these reflections mirror the observer as actions a moment before they occur, creating a sense of connection to a hidden presence. Lanterns inside cabins brighten or dim subtly in response, casting flickering shadows that suggest movement even when nothing is there. Winterpine Hollow tests perception and awareness. It rewards those who move slowly, listen intently, and observe carefully. Every creak, flicker of light, or shifting shadow is a clue to the hollow's rhythm and history. Travelers emerge with memories etched not only in sight and sound, but in the very feeling of the place. The tug of unseen hands, the cold that carries warmth for an instant, and the unmistakable impression of being part of something greater than themselves. The village endures as a hidden world where beauty and the uncanny coexist. Lantern-lit streets, shifting shadows, and snow-laden cabins form a landscape alive with memory and presence. Winterpine Hollow is a place that lingers in the mind long after one has left, a frozen realm of quiet observation, fleeting figures and sensations that defy explanation. Visitors leave carrying fragments of the experience. The soft crunch of snow, glimpses of figures that vanish, the tug of a coat or brush of a hand. Winterpine Hollow becomes more than a village. It becomes a memory etched in perception, a place where the living and the unseen intersect, suspended in frost, shadow, and the soft glow of lantern light. Icewood sits deep within a forest of frozen firs, where the trees are thick and their branches heavy with frost. The village appears untouched by time, its cabins lined in precise rows, smokeless chimneys rising against the pale sky. The air is still, yet it vibrates with an unseen energy that draws travelers into a world both beautiful and unsettling. Phantom laughter drifts between the cabins, high-pitched and fleeting, vanishing as quickly as it appears. The sounds feel alive, as though the forest itself carries memories of joy and sorrow, replaying them endlessly for those who dare to listen. Travelers pause, expecting to see someone, but the village is empty. The village is empty. The sounds feel alive, as though the forest itself carries memories of joy and sorrow, replaying them endlessly for those who dare to listen. Windows fog up from within without heat or fire. Shapes can be glimpsed behind the glass of figures standing silently, watching or moving with unnatural grace. These glimpses are brief, fleeting, yet enough to leave a lasting impression on those who see them. Each cabin becomes a stage where shadows play out echoes of lives that once filled the village. The snow of icewood seems to capture more than footprints. It preserves whispers and sighs, the soft thud of boots on wooden floors, the creak of doors swinging open, and even voices that speak without lips moving. Travelers report hearing conversations in languages both familiar and unknown, fragments of the past bleeding into the present. Every gust of wind carries something with it, a whisper of memory that brushes against the mind. Figures are seen moving among the trees or within the village, often only partially, as if the snow and cold distort their shapes. Sometimes they walk through paths that should be solid, vanishing when approached. The sense of being observed is constant. Even when alone, the feeling persists that unseen eyes track every step, that the village remembers those who enter and reacts to their presence. The forest surrounding icewood is dense, limiting sight lines and casting long shadows even in daylight. Sunlight filters weakly through the frost-covered branches, illuminating the snow with a ghostly glow. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation, as though the forest waits for visitors to fully comprehend its nature. Paths shift subtly underfoot, familiar trails appearing unfamiliar, urging travelers to stay alert and aware of the subtle cues hidden in the white landscape. Inside the cabins, the air is frigid and still, yet something moves. Figures linger in corners, watching or drifting silently from room to room. Objects appear disturbed, as if brushed by unseen hands. Doors open slightly and close on their own. The lights of lanterns flicker without wind or source, illuminating the faint outlines of people long gone. Each detail reinforces a sense that icewood exists between worlds, a place where the living and the echoes of the departed coexist. Voices seem to follow travelers along streets and through courtyards. Laughter rises suddenly, then fades into silence. Sometimes sobs or whispered names carry across the snow, their origins impossible to locate. Even the wind is deceptive, moving unpredictably and amplifying sounds, so that travelers question what is real and what is the echo of memory. The forest and village act as one entity, shaping perception and heightening the awareness of the unseen. The village preserves both life and death, shadows bending and stretching unnaturally, inviting both fascination and unease. Even in the deepest night, the energy of icewood persists. Cabins are illuminated briefly from within. Fog swirls around windows, and laughter drifts across streets. Shapes glide among trees, and the snow underfoot seems alive with memory. The village exists in layers where past and present merge, and every shadow carries a story waiting to be sensed. Those who leave icewood carry a lingering unease and wonder. The echoes of voices, the glimmers of figures, and the chill of the snow remain in memory. The village etches itself in the minds of visitors, leaving them with the sense that they were never truly alone, and that the frozen forest holds more than frozen trees. It holds remnants of those who lived, those who vanished, and the silent watchers that remain between the pines. Would you dare to wander through icewood, to hear the laughter in empty streets, to see shadows in fog windows, and to feel the weight of a place where memory and spirit are preserved in snow? Frostbrooks is nestled within a narrow valley, its cabins clustered along frozen streams and snow-packed paths. The village appears serene at first glance, quiet under layers of frost, yet it is a place where the ordinary shifts into the extraordinary with little warning. Sudden blizzards sweep through the hollow, clouds of snow swirling without prior sign, reducing visibility and transforming familiar routes into unfamiliar landscapes. Travelers describe a sense of the village being alive, as if unseen forces move alongside them. Shadowy figures glide silently between cabins, pausing momentarily as if observing or guiding. The figures rarely linger, disappearing into snow-laden alleyways or vanishing when approached directly. Their presence is subtle yet persistent, a reminder that Frostbrook exists on the edge between reality and something less tangible. Lanterns sway along empty streets, catching the wind or moving without discernible cause. The glow illuminates snowdrifts and cabin walls, creating elongated shadows that twist across the frozen ground. These lights appear and vanish unpredictably, providing fleeting guidance or warning, and contributing to the hollow's surreal, almost cinematic atmosphere. The interplay of light and shadow transforms each street into a shifting stage, where perception and environment converge. Footsteps echo through the snow, sometimes perfectly in sync with travelers, yet when turned to investigate, the sound disappears. The village responds subtly to movement, drawing attention to particular paths while obscuring others. There is a rhythm to the environment, a pulse that guides those who enter, occasionally leading them forward and at times urging retreat. There is a rhythm to the environment, a pulse that guides those who enter, occasionally leading them forward and at times urging retreat. The sensation is gentle yet insistent, a presence that is both protective and mysterious. The wind carries more than cold. It brings whispers, the soft rustle of unseen movement, and the faint, almost melodic sighs of snow shifting under invisible weight. Even when the air is still, the hollow resonates with sound, amplifying quiet and drawing attention to details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Travelers report a heightened awareness, perceiving nuances in the snow, the mist, and the subtle play of shadows that suggest a living environment in constant interaction with its visitors. Snow-covered rooftops glisten under the pale light of the moon, reflecting silver across streets and streams. Icicles hang like delicate ornaments from eaves, catching the faint glow of lanterns or the shifting light of passing clouds. The village presents a beauty that is stark and chilling, mesmerizing to those who enter yet accompanied by a pervasive sense of unease. Each corner and alley holds a potential for discovery or misdirection, as the environment seems to adapt to the presence of travelers. Blizzards intensify the mystery, reducing visibility to mere feet, and enveloping Frostbrook in a wall of white. During these storms, shadowy figures become more pronounced, appearing briefly at the edges of perception before disappearing again. The swirling snow and obscured paths heighten awareness, making every sound and movement significant. Travelers experience a mixture of caution and fascination, sensing that the Villager S-forces are both guiding and testing them simultaneously. Footprints in the snow are transient, forming and vanishing unpredictably. Paths shift subtly under new snowfall, and familiar landmarks seem to alter their positions. This mutable quality creates an impression that Frostbrook is a dynamic entity, interacting with those who walk its streets. The environment encourages observation, attention, and a respect for the hidden rules that govern its frozen expanse. Even attempts to record or document the village often fail to capture its essence. Cameras flatten depth and distort light. Audio equipment misses the subtle whispers carried by the wind, and the precise choreography of shadow and snow cannot be fully reproduced. The experience is personal, ephemeral, and profoundly immersive, leaving a lasting impression on those who venture into the hollow. Each visit becomes part of Frostbrook's ongoing narrative, a story shaped by perception, presence, and memory. Despite the disorienting elements, Frostbrook holds a captivating beauty. Snow-laden streets curve between frozen streams. Cabin lights reflect softly on ice. And shadows shift like living brushstrokes across the landscape. The village draws visitors into a delicate balance of caution and wonder. Encouraging exploration, while reminding travelers that they are part of an environment that is alive, responsive, and full of mystery. Frostbrook is more than a frozen village in a narrow valley. It is a space where perception, subtle forces, and natural phenomena converge. Shadowy figures, swaying lanterns, transient footsteps, and sudden blizzards combine. To engage the senses and the imagination, travelers leave with a profound awareness of the extraordinary, carrying with them the understanding that every journey through Frostbrook becomes part of the Hollow's enduring and enigmatic story. Glacier Pines clings to a steep, frozen slope, its cabins scattered like scattered gems among towering pines and rugged cliffs. The village appears tranquil under a blanket of snow, the slopes reflecting pale light from a winter sun or a distant moon. Yet visitors quickly sense that the Hollow is far from ordinary, that the very air holds an unseen presence, delicate yet insistent. Travelers report lights glowing from rooftops and windows where none should exist. They appear suddenly, flickering and shifting as though responding to movement or gaze, illuminating paths and trees in brief, ethereal flashes. When approached, the lights vanish, leaving only the snow and the still outlines of cabins. The phenomenon challenges perception, creating a tension between what is visible and what remains concealed. Shadowy figures glide silently through the village, appearing at the edges of vision and vanishing when directly observed. Their movements are deliberate, fluid, and unnervingly natural, as if they are part of the landscape itself. Even when they disappear, their presence lingers, felt as a subtle pressure in the air, a sense of being watched or guided. These fleeting glimpses combine with the environment to produce an experience that is both mesmerizing and disorienting. The wind carries whispers across the frozen slopes. Names and fragments of conversations drift unpredictably, catching on pine branches and trailing along the snow. Travelers often pause, listening intently as the wind shapes these sounds, amplifying some while erasing others. It is as if Glacier Pines remembers moments long past, allowing echoes to travel briefly before retreating into frozen silence. Snow and ice enhance the village's enigmatic qualities. Footsteps crunch on crisp snow, yet sometimes the sound is mirrored by invisible steps behind travelers. Tracks appear and vanish, suggesting movement that is unseen and perhaps impossible. Paths are never fixed. Trails twist and fold under fresh snowfall, leading travelers to unexpected corners of the village, guiding them subtly while maintaining a sense of mystery. Lanterns and faint cabin lights interact with the shadows and snow to produce shifting patterns that alter perception. Trees cast elongated silhouettes, and frozen streams reflect ghostly images that seem to move independently of the environment. Even the most familiar routes become labyrinthine, offering glimpses of spaces that seem to exist only temporarily, as though the village itself rearranges under the weight of snow and time. The village is alive with sound and absence. Creaking eaves, rustling pines, and distant groans of ice create a subtle symphony. The interplay of natural and inexplicable sound contributes to the immersive experience, creating a sense of presence that is both protective and watchful. Visitors feel a heightened awareness of every noise, every shift in light, and every movement within the periphery of vision. Night intensifies Glacier Pine's spectral qualities. The slope becomes a patchwork of shadows and light, with windows glowing intermittently and mist rising from frozen streams. Figures appear more pronounced at twilight, their forms fleeting yet distinct against the backdrop of snow. The village seems to breathe, exhaling cold air that carries movement and sound, enveloping travelers in a sensory landscape that is simultaneously captivating and unsettling. Attempts to document the village rarely capture its essence. Cameras flatten depth, and audio devices cannot fully reproduce the whispers carried by the wind. Light and shadow interact in ways that are almost impossible to record, and the transient figures evade capture entirely. Glacier Pines retains its mysteries for those present, offering experiences that are personal, ephemeral, and profoundly memorable. Despite its eerie qualities, the village possesses a stark and haunting beauty. Snow-covered rooftops glint under dim moonlight, icy branches glisten, and pines sway softly in the wind. The combination of light, shadow, and movement engages visitors, drawing them into a delicate balance of awe, caution, and curiosity. Glacier Pines is more than a village on a steep slope. It is a convergence of environment, perception, and subtle, unexplained phenomena. Lights that vanish, whispers in the wind, fleeting figures, and shifting paths combine to create an experience that engages the senses and the imagination, and the understanding that every journey through glacier pines becomes part of the Leja's enduring enigmatic story. Icevale Hollow lies cradled between jagged cliffs and icy streams that snake through the frozen valley. The village appears untouched, its narrow streets lined with frost-covered buildings. Snow blankets rooftops and walkways, muffling sound and creating a sense of otherworldly stillness. Every step taken by a traveler seems amplified, yet the air carries a curious silence, as though the hollow itself listens and responds. Ghostly forms drift across the streets, moving with quiet purpose. Their footsteps make no sound, yet they leave a trace in the imagination, a feeling that something or something is always near. Windows glow faintly, revealing shapes that seem human at first glance, then vanish when approached. Light flickers within cabins without cause, and doors creak open as if pushed by invisible hands, letting in the cold wind that carries whispers from another time. The air is sharp and biting, sending chills that cut deeper than the snow. Travelers often pause, sensing the temperature drop suddenly around them. It is not merely cold, but a presence that presses against the skin, a reminder that Icevale Hollow is a place caught between the living and the echoes of the past. The village seems to replay moments frozen in time, frozen in snow, as if the landscape itself preserves memory and spirit. Snow drifts cover the streets unevenly, hiding steps and paths. Shapes are glimpsed moving behind frost-laced windows, and shadows bend unnaturally along alleyways. The wind carries distant murmurs, unintelligible but familiar, like fragments of conversations long forgotten. Every gust seems deliberate, shaping perception and heightening awareness of the unseen. Travelers feel watched not by eyes, but by a presence that spans both the natural and the supernatural. Inside the cabins, the air is frigid, yet full of movement. Lanterns flicker to life without touch, casting long, dancing shadows across walls. Figures linger in corners or drift silently from room to room. Objects seem shifted slightly from where they were left, as if the village remembers and rearranges itself in subtle ways. The sense of time is fluid here, moments from long ago playing alongside the present, creating a tapestry of memory and unease. Footsteps echo across empty streets, though no one is seen. Travelers report fleeting glimpses of people crossing town squares, entering buildings, then vanishing mid-step. The snow preserved these moments, capturing them in its icy grip, so that the past and present coexist simultaneously. Even the streams that run to the hollow seem to carry voices, small ripples whispering names and phrases in a language that feels both ancient and intimate. The cliffs that surround Icevale Hollow cast long shadows, even in daylight. Their presence is imposing, containing the village within a frozen amphitheater of rock and ice. The light filters weakly through overcast skies, creating long, muted shadows that enhance the sense of stillness. Travelers describe a feeling of separation from the outside world, as if crossing into Icevale Hollow is crossing a threshold into a place where normal rules no longer apply. As night falls, the village transforms. Windows glow brighter with no source of illumination. Shadows lengthen, and ghostly forms become more distinct. Figures walk along rooftops and frozen streets, their movements deliberate yet silent. Whispers ride the wind, brushing against ears and disappearing before they can be understood. The cold intensifies, gripping travelers and leaving them aware of the presence that permeates every building, every street, every snowdrift. The village preserves life and death alike. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light is a fragment of memory. The sense of being observed never wanes, and the hollow seems to respond to those who enter, guiding their steps or unsettling them with subtle movements and sounds. Even in the deepest night, Icevale Hollow hums with unseen energy. Lanterns ignite in empty cabins. Figures glide along streets, and snowdrifts capture movements that are no longer possible. The village exists between worlds, a place where memory, spirit, and the frozen landscape converge. Travelers leave carrying the sensation that the village remains with them, that the whispers, shadows, and frozen moments are not confined to the hollow but travel beyond it. Would you dare to step into Icevale Hollow? To hear voices in the snow, to see shadows crossing streets, and feel the cold presence that watches silently from frozen windows and icy cliffs. The hollow waits, preserving every moment and every soul that passes through, leaving an indelible mark on those who experience its frozen embrace. Frosthaven rests quietly in a secluded valley, surrounded by slopes dusted with snow and forests that stretch endlessly into the distance. The village seems still at first, as if time itself has paused, yet subtle movements betray an unseen life. Lanterns ignite without source, casting soft pools of light along narrow streets and frost-covered rooftops. Doors swing open and close, their motions silent yet deliberate, echoing through empty corridors and alleys. Shadows move along walls and rooftops, often against the natural angles of buildings, slipping around corners or lingering where nothing should be. Travelers report the sensation of being watched, a persistent awareness that eyes unseen follow every step. The air carries a chill, not just from the winter cold, but from the weight of countless presences that seem bound to the valley. Ghostly children dart through the streets, their laughter carried faintly on the wind. They appear briefly, running across intersections or through open doorways, vanishing before one can fully see them. Occasionally, adults appear in windows, standing silently as if observing the living. Their presence is fleeting, a glimpse of life that once was, leaving a lingering sense of longing and unease. Lantern light flickers unexpectedly, revealing subtle movements that vanish when examined closely. A figure may appear to lean against a building, only to dissolve into shadow when approached. Floors creak under invisible weight, and snow outside footprints in patterns that do not match the steps of any known traveler. The village seems to play with perception, blurring the line between reality and the unseen. Even in the stillness, Frosthaven is alive with sound. The faint clatter of doors, the scuff of invisible shoes across wooden planks, and soft whispers that drift through empty streets create a melody of the unseen. Occasionally, distant voices call names or repeat words, echoing from corners where no one stands. Travelers often pause, uncertain whether to continue or retreat, feeling the hollow presence of the village pressing close. Windows glow warmly even when unlit, revealing figures moving behind frosted glass. They perform mundane tasks that belong to a world long past, tending to unseen fires, adjusting curtains, or gazing silently outward. The living observer becomes a witness to the past, a fleeting participant in the daily rhythms of spirits that linger between memory and presence. Paths in Frosthaven twist subtly, the snow-laden streets leading travelers in unexpected directions. Buildings appear closer or farther than expected, alleys elongate, and familiar corners seem altered. Every step carries uncertainty, and every glance may reveal a fleeting figure, a shadow, or a glowing lantern that disappears when approached. The forest surrounding the valley enhances the otherworldly atmosphere. Trees bend under the weight of snow, their branches creaking in the wind, creating the illusion of movement among the shadows. Occasional animal calls are distorted, echoing through the valley in ways that seem to answer or respond to the living. The environment itself feels alive, intertwined with the spirits that linger within the village. Travelers often describe sudden sensations. Cold touches that brush a sleeve, the tug of an unseen hand, or a whisper brushing across the ear. The experiences are subtle, yet unmistakable, leaving a sense of being connected to something beyond the visible. Frosthaven is not threatening in a violent way, but the weight of observation and the presence of the unseen is constant and undeniable. Buildings hold layers of history and memory. Interiors are preserved in frost and shadow, windows framing views that may never have existed in the present. Each structure seems to retain fragments of past lives, performing silently for those who are willing to notice. The village becomes a living tableau, a stage where time and memory intersect with the present. Frosthaven rewards those who move slowly and observe carefully. Every flicker of light, every shifting shadow, and every echoing step offers insight into the rhythm of the village. The living visitor becomes part of a delicate interaction, experiencing moments that are both beautiful and unsettling. The air is heavy with presence, yet the glow of lanterns and the soft sparkle of snow lend an ethereal calm to the experience. The glow of lanterns and the soft sparkle of snow lend an ethereal calm to the experience. The air is heavy with presence, yet the glow of lanterns and the soft sparkle of snow lend an ethereal calm to the experience. The valley itself seems alive, reacting subtly to the presence of travelers. Mist drifts across streets, curling around cabins and trees, carrying the faintest hints of movement. The wind whispers in patterns that suggest awareness, carrying sounds and scents that are impossible to trace. Frosthaven is a village suspended between the living and the unseen, where light and shadow, sound and silence, memory and presence converge. The experiences are subtle yet profound, leaving travelers with impressions etched not only in memory, but in sensation. Every step, glance, and breath carries the weight of unseen watchers and echoes of lives long past. Visitors emerge in the valley carrying fragments of Frosthaven with them, the sound of distant laughter, glimpses of figures that vanish, and a lingering touch of presence felt yet unseen. The village leaves a lasting impression, a memory of a place alive with spirits, where the line between past and present blurs, and the quiet observation of the unseen is felt in every frozen street. And glowing lanterns, and a lingering touch of presence felt yet unseen. Snowspire sits perched high upon a ridge, its rooftops dusted with snow that glimmers faintly under the pale winter light. The village stretches along narrow, winding streets that descend steeply from the ridge, bordered by tall, frosted buildings that lean slightly as if bowing to the weight of the years and snow. A silence hangs over the village, punctuated only by the occasional crackle of ice or the distant rush of wind through the alleys. Travelers who approach Snowspire often speak of a sensation that the village itself is alive, watching and waiting. Shadowy figures are glimpsed at the edges of rooftops, standing motionless for moments that feel elongated, before gliding silently across streets and alleys. Their forms are never clear, shifting with the snow and shadows, leaving observers questioning whether they are truly seen or imagined. The presence is subtle but undeniable, an invisible awareness that follows the footsteps of anyone daring enough to enter the village. The alleys of Snowspire are narrow and winding, flanked by buildings that rise like frozen sentinels. Snow drifts accumulate in corners, forming small dunes that shift mysteriously overnight, erasing footprints and obscuring paths. Travelers often describe the sense of being guided along certain routes, or conversely, finding themselves inexplicably led in circles, as if the village itself determines their course. Every step to the snow-laden streets seems to echo, carrying faint whispers that beckon or warn, their origin impossible to pinpoint. Windows along the main street sometimes reveal fleeting figures, standing motionless or moving slowly from one frame to another. Some appear as adults, others as children playing silently in the snow. Their faces are rarely visible, yet the sense of recognition is palpable, as if the village holds onto the memory of its former inhabitants. Faint voices drift through alleys, carried by the wind or perhaps conjured by the mind, uttering words that seem almost familiar. Travelers report chills that run deeper than the winter cold, a sensation that the village is aware of their presence, assessing whether they may linger or must depart. Snowspire's architecture enhances the eerie atmosphere. Steep roofs are laden with ice and snow, icicles hanging like frozen daggers along eaves. Wooden shutters creak against the wind. Doors open or close without anyone near. Lanterns mounted along the streets flicker unpredictably, sometimes illuminating corners where shadowy figures vanish as quickly as they appeared. The interplay of light, shadow, and snowfall creates an environment that feels both timeless and otherworldly, a village caught between memory and the present moment. The ridge upon which Snowspire sits offers views that are as breathtaking as they are unsettling. From the higher streets, Travelers can see distant valleys blanketed in snow, the edges of the village fading into mist and frost. Yet even in the open spaces, figures are glimpsed fleetingly between buildings or drifting along the rooftops. The wind carries sounds that seem exaggerated, footsteps following where no one walks, and whispers that weave through the air as though guided by unseen hands. Visitors often feel profound disorientation, unsure whether they are ascending or descending, moving forward or being led backward. Time in Snowspire feels malleable, shifting unpredictably. A visitor may walk the same street multiple times, yet notice subtle changes in the position of buildings, the shape of drifts, or the placement of lanterns. Snow that seemed undisturbed a moment ago may suddenly bear footprints or trails that appear to have been left by no living creature. Travelers describe a heightened sense of awareness, feeling observed from multiple directions simultaneously. The village seems to measure each step, each pause, and each glance, creating an immersive experience where perception and reality intertwine. The village is alive not only in presence but in sound. Faint creaks, whispers, and the soft crunch of snow under invisible feet echo through the streets. These sounds are often unpredictable, coming from alleys, rooftops, or even from behind the traveler. Some visitors have described hearing voices that call their names, soft tones that fade when focused upon, leaving an impression that the village itself is interacting with them. Silence, too, carries weight, as though the absence of sound amplifies the awareness of being watched and followed. Snowspire is not limited to streets and rooftops. Its small square, lined with frost-covered benches and a frozen fountain, exudes the same subtle presence. Figures are seen briefly near the fountain, sometimes gazing toward the ridge, and sometimes watching the streets, vanishing when approached. Travelers report the sensation of being part of a story that unfolds around them, with the village orchestrating moments that blend memory, perception, and fear. Even the most cautious wanderers find themselves drawn to explore further, compelled by curiosity and the intangible allure of the unknown. As night falls, Snowspire transforms. Lanterns glow faintly against the darkening snow, casting long, shifting shadows across streets and walls. Figures on rooftops are silhouetted against the pale sky, and voices drift more distinctly through alleys. The wind seems to carry emotion, sorrow, and warning entwined, and travelers often feel that they are part of a performance, observed by the village as it tests their courage and resolve. Every moment is charged with tension, curiosity, and the sense that something both present and unseen moves alongside them. Visitors leave Snowspire carrying its memory with them, often feeling the village has become part of their own consciousness. Images of gliding shadows, whisper voices, and snow-laden streets linger long after departure. The ridge, the rooftops, and the alleys remain etched in the mind, a reminder that some places exist not only in geography, but in perception, memory, and atmosphere. Snowspire is more than a village. It is a living, breathing entity that engages, observes, and challenges those who enter its frozen embrace. Snowspire remains perched high on its ridge, timeless, alive, and enigmatic. Every shadow, whisper, and glimmer of light contributes to an experience that is at once beautiful, haunting, and unforgettable. Travelers who venture here do so with the knowledge that the village watches, remembers, and shapes the journey, leaving an indelible mark on the mind, a story carried long after the snow and shadows have faded from sight. Winterwatch emerges at the far edge of the frozen landscape. Its cabins are dusted with fresh snow, roofs heavy under the weight of winter. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, disappearing into the pale gray sky. The streets are quiet, yet there's a sense that the village itself is aware of every footstep, every whisper carried by the wind. Travelers who have wandered into Winterwatch speak of lights flickering on porches, igniting as if by unseen hands. Shadows dart between buildings, gliding along walls and around corners before vanishing into the snowy night. The air carries faint voices, almost familiar, calling names that should not be known. It is a place suspended between now and memory, a village frozen in time, yet alive with echoes of lives once lived. Footprints appear and disappear in the snow, as if erased by invisible passers-by. The frozen ground reflects the soft glow of lanterns, creating halos of light that flicker with each gust of wind. Trees bow under the weight of ice, branches creaking and groaning, forming natural corridors that guide travelers deeper into the village. Even the cabins seem to hold stories within their walls. Windows glimmer with life, though when approached, they reveal only empty rooms. Doors that were closed moments before swing gently, almost inviting curiosity, before settling quietly as if nothing had happened. There is a rhythm to the village, a pulse that is both unnerving and mesmerizing. Footsteps are rarely heard, yet the snow shifts and drifts as though someone has passed moments before. The wind carries whispers that travel down the streets. Faint phrases are almost recognizable, calling to the living as well as a memory of the departed. Those who linger too long report a sense of presence, as though unseen inhabitants are watching, guiding, or waiting for something long forgotten. At dusk, the village takes on a different life. Shadows lengthen and stretch across the snow, distorting shapes of cabins and trees into forms both familiar and strange. Lanterns glow brighter in the growing darkness, yet their warmth offers little comfort. Each corner, each alley, holds a possibility of a story that began long ago and refuses to end. Travelers describe glimpses of figures at the edges of their vision. A woman crossing a porch, a child standing at a window, a man walking along the frozen street only to vanish when approached. There is a delicacy to their movement, like memories caught in the act of fading. The village keeps them in its embrace, replaying fragments of life in a loop that is at once haunting and beautiful. The snow seems to absorb sound, creating a quiet so profound it becomes almost tangible. Steps are muffled, conversations drift and fade before they reach the ears. And even the wind moves with careful deliberation. The silence is alive, a waiting hush that draws attention to every small detail, every flicker of light, every subtle movement that might otherwise go unnoticed. Despite the stillness, Winter Watch feels alive with history. Each cabin, each pathway, seems to whisper of past winters, of festivals once held, of families gathering in warmth, that now exists only in memory. The village holds its secrets close, revealing only what it chooses, leaving the rest to imagination. Even as daylight fades, the village refuses to surrender its mysteries. Shadows deepen, snow sparkles under the pale moonlight, and the air grows colder yet more vivid. Travelers often pause at the edge of the village, sensing both invitation and warning. There is a rhythm to Winter Watch that cannot be forced or hurried, a pace dictated by the snow, the wind, and the memories trapped in each cabin and alleyway. Some speak of small gestures of welcome, a lantern that swings gently when no one is near, a door left slightly ajar, the faint scent of fire that has long burned out. These 25 haunted snow villages remind us that Montana's beauty is only part of the story. Beneath the serene snowfall lies history, mystery, and lingering spirits. Phantom figures, whispers in the wind, and lanterns that light themselves tell stories of lives interrupted, tragedies repeated, and memories frozen in time. As you explore these tales, remember that the cold can carry more than frost. It can carry echoes, shadows, and whispers that never truly leave. Should you wander into these frozen villages, tread carefully, listen closely, and remember that the past watches. May your journeys be cautious, your senses sharp, and your courage unwavering. For in Montana's snow-laden landscapes, the haunted villages wait silently, frozen yet alive, watching every step you take.